.org.
Was that man?
.org. Yeah. No, our standard at bishoptv.org.
She just resigned.
I'm
I was
separate.
just gonna say, you're now the manager and she's gone.
Wow.
He's talking to the marketing person about the website for the fire department.
Okay, whenever Madam Mayor is ready.
Thank you. All right, I'm calling this meeting to order Wednesday, March 9th. 8:08 p.m. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Tom,
Here.
Councilmember Garcia,
Here.
Councilmember Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ellis.
Here.
Mayor Schwartz.
Here.
Thank you.
Public comment. Notice to the public. This time is set aside to receive public comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. Is there any public comment?
I do not see any public comments in our public comment email, and I do not see any raised hands. Jenny, can you confirm?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you.
No comments from Fred Carlton.
Nothing.
Okay. Moving on, strategic planning discussion. Council to discuss, identify, and prioritize the City of Bishop's work efforts, future projects, vision, mission. Administration, Dustin.
Good evening, council. Just a little introduction before we get into this. So tonight's purpose is to set a vision and goals for the city of Bishop. Look, we didn't turn ours on, sorry about that. So tonight's goals is to set a vision and goals for the city of Bishop in a living document that will produce a path forward to develop budgets, strengthen the city financially, and simply make Bishop the best city it can be. My hope is that this meeting can stay somewhat informal, so it's conducive to a lot of conversation today. And with the more, the better. I'd like to thank all the staff involved with this. We locked ourselves in a room for most of the day and accomplished something that we haven't done in a long time. And I wanted to say, I'm proud to say that every single one of us thought about the city as a whole and not our individual departments. And I think this document will reflect that as we go through there. As we go along, and I don't want to, it's not going to be a destined show. All the department heads can chime in and take on their parts of this plan and explain and answer questions. And again, like I said, this is a living document, so we should try to strive to achieve the goals that are on it, but revisit it on a regular basis and make sure that we are still, those vision and those goals are still what we're looking at. Elaine, as we go through this, is going to be sharing her screen with the document in a Word version, and we'll try to capture everything that we change or move around and add it and subtract it so we don't lose things in the shuffle. And with that said, I guess any questions? And like I said, I lamented a little on this. I've never done it before. I hope I can bring something that is useful for our time tonight. And then I started thinking back. I said, wow, what am I worried about? We could be in the Ukraine right now, and then we'd have something to worry about. So this is going to be a fun evening.
Thank you.
All right, so as you see, we put this plan together in, I believe, 7 categories, and everybody has a paper copy. I'll give it a second for Elaine to be able to share her screen. Robin, is there any public joined with us on Zoom?
I see
Is that for just one IT?
one. Sue Butler. Sue Butler.
One? Okay,
Yes.
good. I just wanted, hopefully they can see everything well too and hear us as well. So our first category that we started off with is we decided building and creating community. This has a lot to do with parks, Dan had a lot of ideas that came from his master plan that have been on the table for a long time. You know, a lot of it is there's huge financial burdens that are, that have kept us from doing it. But we want to capture these in this document and try to strive to achieve them. And Dan, feel free right now to kind of jump in with your stuff on this topic.
All right, good evening and thank you, Mayor and Council, for coming together tonight to bring our 5-year master plan to reality. Basically with the city parks, master plan is something that's been a living document and has changed over time. But there are some hard goals that we've set for ourselves within the next 5 years. I mean, my goal within the next 10 years of my life at the city is to see the entire park master plan completed. I think it's reflective of the community, and a lot of time and effort went through our park master plan with R.O. Anderson to develop this park master plan. It's been revised and gone through our Parks and Rec Commission, and it of course presented to the city council numerous times. So within this, basically is to complete 5 years of our 10-year plan. So this would be the first 5 years of what we see would be achievable within that 5-year period. Strengthen our relationships with volunteers and stakeholders to accomplish community goals and projects, including community gardeners, AMACA, Little League, AYSO, after school program, and of course swim team. Those are just the few groups that volunteer and actually use the city park for a lot of their functions. They have large volunteer groups and bases, and they also are groups with a lot of ideas. And as they evolve and as they change, is how can we work together to achieve their goals, but also help achieve park master plan goals, because were a part of the original document. So that's why that's in there, is to basically entertain those groups and keep those groups in mind when we're doing things, and also communicate with them and see what's changed and what's going on. Does anybody have any questions or comments for that? Or? I'm sure you will.
The one, what about like adult sports leagues? Would that be another kind of community that uses the parks, or is that more just the?
Of course, I couldn't list everyone.
Okay,
The
okay, so
list
these are
is-
like the main ones.
These are the
Got
main
it.
ones
Okay,
that
okay.
we'd come up with.
Got
of
it,
course.
okay.
And when you say strengthen those relationships, do you have any actions in mind in strengthening, or do you just mean? like,
Yes,
keep maintaining?
as we go back into public meetings, especially with our Parks and Rec Commission, the Parks and Rec Commission is their outlet for that. So that's the best way to go about it. Like, as you guys saw with the mountain bike park, with the community group coming forward, and just keeping those relationships going. So that's our outlet, and just keeping our doors open and keeping that relationship with those people. I don't want to lose sight of those people as we move through.
And I think it's important to note that on that, with these different groups is, they always come with some really great ideas, and we turn around and tell them, well, find the money and we'll try to figure out how to make it happen. In this plan, we want to decide, when these people bring this to us, do we want to try to make some of these things happen? We're always telling them, go find money, but can we make some of these things happen without them going and finding money?
And one group that you don't see on this list, of course, is Eastern Sierra Roller Hockey. So we, between Dustin and myself, we've been working very diligently in the last couple of weeks to try to bring basically an indoor roller hockey rink to the city of Bishop. So
Multi-use, right?
multi-use.
Roller
If it's in the
skating.
city park, it will have basketball courts and of course volleyball courts in it as well. It'll be a multiple use facility.
Karen Tug is dying for roller skating.
I'm not allowed any longer.
What was that sport that you said you used to do?
Roller derby.
Roller derby. So,
Yeah.
But
That was
that's
Adam Smasher.
to take that a little further is, I think that the town of Mammoth contacted Mayor Swartz and said they're getting a new, finally getting a new indoor hockey rink, and would Bishop like it? Well, an ice hockey rink is not gonna work in Bishop. We get about maybe 2 weeks a year that we could utilize it. But could we take that shell, the boards, the glass, all that stuff, and put it onto a concrete area you know, of course, it would probably eventually need to have some type of a roof on it, structure to keep, you know, keep it somewhat clean, you know, but what a great thing.
I think
And
that'd be awesome.
I met with, talked with Adam Perez and kind of leveraged his love of hockey and say, how can you help us find room? Because the park is running out of room and we truly have a master plan we came up with. We keep just letting little things take spots there and next thing you know, we can't complete what we thought we should build.
So I guess that's my question. You said that, I remember when the master plan got created, but we're basically just starting with the first 5 years of the master plan now.
No, there's been multiple phases that have been completed just in small elements. Within these are rather large elements that'll be achievable goals.
Okay, great.
Hey, Dan, on this section, I know I met with Sierra Roller Hockey League and some of these groups over my tenure here. And I love where we're going. I think Destin's on the right track too, that we need to work with them. It's not just go find money, but I think at the same time, we need to maybe work with some of these groups to go find money.
Yes.
And think outside the box. Hockey, for instance, there's, I don't follow hockey enough, but 26 teams in the hockey league.
Yeah.
How many of them have they reached out to say, we're trying to build this up in a little small town and sell them a story, and all it takes is one CEO to one of those things, yeah, here, bam. And I want to see us maybe look at, I know there was talk at one time, I don't know what happened to it, with Major League Baseball and lighting field 2.
Working on it.
Okay, so I just want to, I mean, yeah, it's easy to come to a city saying, give us money, give us everything we want. And I would love to help them. And if we lived in Palm Springs and had enormous amount of money, but we don't. So I want to see, I think as a council, I think, yeah, we can partner with them, meet halfway and help. But
Yeah, I mean, to follow on to what you're saying, I think one of the ways that the city could definitely help is like, now we do have that contract with a grant writer, so they know a lot more about what funding is available. And so we definitely make sure to keep that in mind when people pitch ideas to us. But also what Jim's talking about is effectively like promoting what our vision is to a lot of philanthropists and people with a bunch of
yeah,
money.
don't be afraid to dream, but let's
Yeah,
be aggressive in that dream, not just Bishop, can you help us?
so like having that sort of a pitch.
Yeah, it's definitely a partnership between those groups, and sometimes it's multiple partnerships with Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, Southern California Edison, and a lot of the agencies around that have the ability to donate their time. So.
And I'm just gonna sort of address the elephant in the room as far as Park and Rec is concerned. It seems to me that we as a city ought to at least have a discussion with the county about maybe them, Dan, just gave me a smile. Maybe having the county chip in some for our Park and Rec programs, because everyone in the county participates in them, at least in the North County, and it seems to me if we're gonna try to accomplish these things and they continue to make things better and better and better, which we have been doing, it would be great if they acknowledge that and maybe chipped in a few dollars.
Because, I mean, yeah, the facilities that we have at the pool, the majority, like, we have
The entire park is basically a community park for everything you see from, we have people come as far as Fish Lake Valley, all the way from Bridgeport and Lee Vining to play games in our fields.
Yeah.
So it's an actual regional park. It's not just a city park.
True.
So.
It'd be good to
Thanks.
put that tie in. And I think, and when we've brought this up with the county in the past, because we have brought this up with the county in the past, is they've always asked for like a concrete project that they could be chipping into, actually, not just give us a lump of money, but like, let's do it for this particular purpose, so.
I think there are lots of concrete projects right here.
I would agree. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So within this, you can see the identified funding for lights on Field 5. Right now, we're seeing an overwhelming number of groups of people trying to basically go year round, as hockey has gone year round, soccer has gone year round. Baseball has gone year round. There's all of our youth groups have gone year round into their seasons, and they do a lot of travel. The issue with that is we're seeing more and more kids participate, and it limits the amount of space and availability that we have. By creating lit fields, we'll be able to schedule and have those people there in the evenings. So it's not only just lighting field 2 or 3, it would be actually lighting field 5 would be our biggest impact right now.
But then eventually like 6, 7, 8, when 7 and 8 are built.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Hey, Dan, on to Stephen's point, and I know, Justin, you know about this one too, you talk about it. You have great things here. I've seen your master plan, I think it's probably one of the best design documents I've ever seen as far as it's there. But there's great ideas on here, and I'm sure this meeting is probably the reason what it'll come to, but are there actual numbers attached to here? And
yes, some of them. So yes, some of them.
And many of our numbers are 3, 5, 7 years old, and they're not representative anymore. And so I think we need to, and we'll get to later about those, how we get to there. So
if we talk about shovel-ready jobs,
yeah,
stuff, are we at that spot where, bam, we can take it and go?
Do we have plans that are shovel ready? And so yeah, maybe that's part of what we focus on year 1 is getting all those plans shovel ready.
So thank you.
Yeah, getting it, so that
So we got another.
we can just, here's a grant funding opportunity. Here we are with the shovel ready project.
Yeah.
Just,
that falls in that public infrastructure, but it actually falls within every one of these categories. And I think that's a great start on year 1 is let's dedicate money to getting design and CEQA done and all that. So, you know, we're missing a golden opportunity with grants right now because we've never invested in that. And every one of them is, we want something ready right now.
When opportunity comes up, we're ready. to
We're
go.
ready.
County, we're ready to go. State,
Have
we're ready.
a park project, a public works project, a city hall project, something that'll fit any bill.
And like Dustin brought up too, is the financing of them as well. As we know, the costs of things are going through the roof within 72 to 48 hours. And it helps to have those documents done and be able to add those contingencies in as well, because things are just, we were talking to Danny Boyd about moving the pool fence the other day, and he said my quote is good for 72 hours for materials. And that
So
was no
his
joke.
materials people give him 72.
72 hours.
So he's like, if I give you a price and you're happy, sign the thing, let's go.
So for instance, today I started looking at there's a municipality MLB grant for $50,000, about 50 to 80,000. I started looking at it to see if we could replace fences on ball fields. And that's one of those, it's one of the things that falls within the grant is just replacing the fence. The issue that I have with that is if I call Danny Boyd and have him come and look at the fence, he gives me a quote that's only good for 72 hours. So how do I do a grant that's going to take 2 to 3 months to get approved, and those finances may change in that time too.
Yeah, bump it by 20%.
That's what we did with our main grant for the Prop 68.
All right, Dan, so you have a grant, 50,000, and you get a quote from Boyd at 58. Can we make up the difference and be happy with 50,000 and
That would be your
could change
decision.
and move around?
That would be your decision, and I'm okay with that. So.
The one thing before we move on to like the other parts of the building and creating community is we should integrate the building of the more fields and the building of like more programs in the park into our economic development, because there is a huge opportunity for winter months to host more tournaments. And I know we've been very limited by our field space,
Yes,
but you know, our numbers in January, and February, and March for TOT are low. They're 60% compared to
the
summer.
area we're
And
Yeah.
we could fill town with a baseball tournament, with a soccer tournament. And so it really dovetails into increasing the park facilities and increasing economic development and bringing people here that might not otherwise spend time in Bishop in the winter. And
Yeah.
winter in Bishop is pretty top notch.
Well, and
So-
Karen, look at Carson City, they have soccer, everyone here in this town who's in AYSO goes to Carson City for what, 2-3 days?
Yeah, in like November or something, right?
Well, and we're going now,
Yeah.
we're all traveling
Yeah, hockey's the same way.
multiple weekends. So I think there's a huge opportunity for sports tournaments in the winter. in
Right,
Bishop.
and we're not talking about local sports tournaments, and we've thought about this too, is it's bringing in, multiple sports groups from out of town.
Oh, right, no, like
Yeah,
traveling
yeah,
teams,
yes.
and and like when we had a brief meeting with AYSO, we don't have to just limit it to the park, they could be playing. At the high school, or they could be, we could partner with them, but I think that really ties into bringing people to stay in our hotel beds and showing off Bishop.
And to not make it seem like it's just a lot of stuff, and so it's hard to prioritize. Just like, oh yeah, we want everything in one go. Especially with regards to when, not to take it too far back, but with regards to shovel-ready projects. I think we should always plan to have, because you could come up with 30 different projects, right? We should always plan to have 3 that are ready.
Yep.
Don't get bogged down just trying to do all of them in one go.
Exactly.
Always have 3 and just have a pipeline, okay, one of them get funded, let's get the other one in. And, but I definitely agree that maybe that's sort of the thing that you're talking about. It is.
Maybe prioritize projects that could bring more people.
Right, and also, and also maybe have the city invest in more of the economic development aspects of it, and I think outside the box in that regard.
And I think Karen, you're on the right track, and I think the word I love is return on investment. I think if it costs the city $20,000 out of general fund to get something completed, done, that turns into over a period of 3 years, $100,000 in increased DOT, was that a good investment on our part?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, so look at it, besides promoting something for the community to make sports and whatever, but look at the economic side of it. Where's our return on this? And if you make the investments into Bishop.
Right, the biggest investment I see up front would be marketing, is being able to market to those people and market to outside agencies and outside areas to show them that we're here and bring them in.
And the only other thing I would say with regard, you're talking about new usable space for user groups. And you mentioned, of course, the hockey league and those sorts of things, is that, and I know you guys are doing this, but we always have to make sure that our population base, the reality is it's not large enough to support specialized anything. So we have to keep in mind that whatever we can, let's make it multi-use.
Yes.
Recently, I've had multiple people reach out to me about wanting a pickleball court. I don't even know what that is, but apparently you can do it with a modified
Our tennis
tennis
courts
court.
are totally modifiable and they do a chalk line on them. It's already happening.
Okay.
So it's not an issue. So,
Good to know.
Pickleballers, they get serious.
Yeah. Okay.
It seems to me that the other place you need to reach out when we're talking about economic development is with those organizations. Could you go to AYSO and say, look, when you go to this tournament, are we going to create a tournament here locally? Is there, that the strengthening those relationships are important as well. The other thing I wanted to say, and it applies to all areas, last year in our budget workshop, we talked about each one of the departments setting up a capital improvement fund within their budgets and putting money in there as they went. And when I was looking at them in the mid-years, there were very few of the departments who had actually done that yet. And so I think that would really help with this implementing capital facilities, restrooms and new playgrounds and stuff, if we actually start doing that, shoveling money into that.
Yeah, and when we get down to the organizational excellence section, that's where that's all gonna play out into there.
Great.
But, and getting back to what Jim said and Stephen about the investment of making small investments for big returns. Right now, we are gonna complete on this list is the sidewalk along Field 1. So we have gas tax money, so it's not ours, but we need to design it, we need to have some survey done. So I had a quote, it's about $3,500 to have a shovel-ready project to go out to bid. So we're gonna invest $3,500 of city money to get a $75,000 project done. It just makes sense to do that. It's something we've never done before, but I just,
Money well spent.
And we're currently doing that with Sunrise Mobile Home Park too, as we put in the budget to hire a consultant. And so hopefully when he's done with that, he's gonna look at Sunrise And we're gonna look at doing full paving project and concrete sidewalks within Sunrise Mobile Home Park, as well as new water lines. Because I was digging up a water line all day at Sunrise Mobile Home Park, so.
But hopefully in that, Dan, and I know that falls in a couple of sections of Sunrises. We also, we need to, well, it'll be further down the list, but we need to really relook at Sunrise again and say, are we using the space? Are we using the space in the best possible way that we can? You know, and before we invest in new roads and sidewalks and water lines, we need to decide is a mobile home park the best thing, or should we build a 3-story apartment complex that houses 80 to 100 different units?
Especially since we're about to do that with the lot right next door.
Exactly.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That's what you get for leaving them laying on tables missing.
But I'll move on really quick and just go
Yeah.
through these guys. Stop me if you have any questions or anything, just, throw a pen at me or whatever you want to do. Renovations, the pool facility, new restrooms, locker rooms and showers is desperately needed at the pool. That is actually a budgeted item and we budgeted for that within the 5-year budget. Reevaluate roles, responsibilities, job descriptions of our community service staff. We've already begun this process. But I'm looking for council to have my support when it comes to this. Is we're looking at the delegation of how everything in the hierarchy throughout the entire department works. We have all the people in place. It's just we've gotten way outside of our job descriptions, and it's reining those back in and getting people focused on their individual job and what they do. Of course, there's overlap in between each one, and we're all there to have each other's back and work together. But it's just how can we be more efficient and better? How can we do this so we can offer more programs? How can we, because we're getting to the point where we're totally tapped out. And how can we use what we have to make it better? I'm not looking at creating new staff or anything like that. It's just a reorganization and seeing how best we can do things.
Are you asking us for support to do your job as manager of your department?
No,
Because you have that
I know you
support, so do it.
Yes, exactly, and that's something I made have a discussion about.
Yes.
We're getting that on track.
and those discussions have already been had. It's been a hectic couple of weeks, but it's my duty to get my entire staff within a room, list out job descriptions, and basically go through everything and let's delegate everything. And with that is also a hiring of a backfilling of basically my old position is finding a lead worker for the city park as well. We've already begun that process. We'll be pulling that job description and updating it as well. And hopefully it hits the paper here in about middle of April or May so that we can get some applicants and get the person hired by July. That will help immensely, especially with my job. It'll allow me to do my job better. Is just having that person at the park that can take care of the pool, also organize the maintenance staff and the pool staff as well. So. Went through the identified funding for Field 5. We're working on that one, as well as Karen knows, as our mayor knows. We're definitely working on that one. That's a big on the hit list right there. Implement capital facility equipment replacement. Of course, the front playgrounds, vehicles, and the front and rear restrooms. So those are, our restrooms are over 40 years old and it's time to replace things. So. But also there was never really a plan for equipment replacement either. So I've developed a plan for not only hours, but mileage on vehicles of which we need to replace things. That's been hit on the pedestrian access at Field 1, new usable space for user groups, Frisbee golf. Unfortunately, I didn't put hockey on here, but that's going to get added to the list because a community group came to us and said, hey, this is what we want. So pavement replacement at Sunrise, and then of course, identify funding for the relocation of softball fields in accordance with the park master plan. That would be the moving of Field 4 and Field 1 back to that back area. And then, of course, within that is looking at identifying funding for a community center at Field 1. So, but that's kind of a long-term goal because it is such a large facility. So. And of course, upgrades to the City Hall complex, we've already begun those, but it's kind of an ongoing issue, as well as, from heating units to everything else, where we do have people that rent that building from us. carpet upgrades, painting, all that stuff, so. And then our last one was to conduct an annual survey to vet community ideas, and that's a big one from our department is we have the ability to do that to all of our users and user groups through sports sites. And I'd like to, if we don't do it one time a year, I'd like to offer it multiple times where we can get community input and community ideas. So there you go. That's with entertaining our volunteer and user groups. So it's really getting feedback, you know, from every program that we do and getting suggestions and those questions and comments and just connecting with our community and make sure that we're serving them the best we can.
Yeah, we don't want to just keep creating meetings, but you know, obviously I've been to the last few Parks and Recs. There's no public that come. They just don't really see that as the avenue to get there. But you know, just calling a special meeting that all we're going to talk about is these groups and what we can do once or twice a year. I think that seems to bring people to the table because they're interested in exactly what you're talking about.
And as we saw when we released the survey for the Prop 68 grant, we got a ton of feedback. And I think that's the way to go. And then taking those and, you know, creating our own dot exercise and categorizing them and seeing what the, you know, community need is at that point. So, and it's always evolving. So you need to do it multiple, you know, if not every year, multiple times a year. So.
I don't see a fountain on here.
Can we swim
I
in
wouldn't say
the
that.
pond?
I wouldn't recommend it
No, sorry.
I get down, I
to swim in the park pond.
We take water, shoot it into pipe.
Yeah, I think this, yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but I do think this is definitely going in the right direction.
And I think these are achievable goals within the next 5 years as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't want to set us up for failure at all.
Dan,
No.
have you heard anything from the state about the grant?
That'll be released in July. So
July, okay,
fingers crossed.
all right, now so I don't forget.
So
I guess one of the questions I have on here, obviously, we're gonna support downtown events and activities, and I think that that's more, yeah, I mean, so the support we're setting up with the groups when they reach out, making it all easy. Are we actually looking at, do we have the bandwidth to invest time of our people to set, to create these sorts of events at this time?
It depends on the capacity of the event.
Okay.
And it also depends if they have liquor, if they have numerous things that do go on, is that's hard to donate a staff member to that. Sure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as we look and we see those events, of course, you know, I'm almost about every community event that we put on, and we do give a lot of our time. I know Wayland gives a lot of his time for the street markets. But as we move forward, it's what does that look like? I mean, we can only give so much. I only have so much staff. And unless we increase staff members, it's going to be very hard to commit someone to an individual event. I'll take your stuff where it needs to go and I'll pick it up when you're done. That's what I'm going to do for Blake Jones Trout Derby this weekend. Just put everything out for them, let them have their event, and when they're done, we'll do the cleanup. So that's kind of how we've done things. Expect, you know, even with meal days, with Earth Day is coming up, we book Earth Day in the park, and that's typically what we do is we set up for them, we make sure that they're taken care of, and then when they're done, we kind of handle the cleanup for them, because that is a huge part of what goes into every event. So.
and I take it even further is, you know, the events that I'm thinking in this line is like the fall Cragen Classic, if I said that correctly. You know, it's trying to get more of those type of events. They're not so much city labor intensive, but you know, how do we draw those people? Because they're just huge events, every one that happens downtown, and
And to your point, Karen, does happen in the winter when our hotel occupancy is
Yeah.
lower.
Right.
And Bishop's just a place that, you know, I lived it with high school rodeo when I was on that board. You know, people don't care if it costs more money to come to Bishop, whatever, as long as they come to Bishop, they want an excuse. And you get them here and then they just keep coming back. And so those events, if they're organized properly and give some people the time to go fishing or whatever they like to do and enjoy an event, they want to come to Bishop to do it. So how do we partner with, I don't know, you know, it's the chamber and everybody to bring more of those things to
Well, that's our Little
downtown.
League, our AWSO, everything. I mean, when we host our Little League tournament every year, you hear those people when they come here to play here, they want to come here. They don't want the Little League tournament anywhere else. They want it here. because they can stay, they can camp, and they can go fishing, and they can do tons of stuff with their family. They're not just here for a baseball game. They come here and they actually, it's a huge economic impact. So the more of those events I think we can have throughout the winter, I think is even better, so.
Move down the list.
Yeah, what are these next two items? They seem to be tied together, right?
The
Traffic safety and mobility
Yeah.
improvements.
exactly, continue to develop more of those, which means maybe bike lanes. How do we do that? That's gonna be further down our list, but the general plan and maybe revisiting that and changing from 10-foot sidewalks or what it might be to a 5-foot sidewalk that would allow a 50-foot wide road and create a bike lane on those roads. Those are big goals, but they're stuff that if we want to make a commitment to that, we need to do it now so that as we plan our next projects, we can allow for them. Because that's the first question they ask anytime you apply for Caltrans money, are you following your general plan? And so we need to make those changes to be able to get money to do those kind of projects.
And that one dovetails really well into the bullet point of working with the schools to encourage walking and biking and taking the bus to school, because you hear every fall when, you're like someone's child's kindergarten, first grade, and they realize that there is no safe way to like have their child bike to school. And it's a bummer because it's such a bikeable town. We're so flat and the biking just isn't safe. So
Yeah, not for the little
No,
ones especially.
so really, if we had if we could make that a priority within the mobility, to get kids to be able to get themselves to school safely without having to be dropped off in a car, I think that would be a huge asset.
I think we really could look at, partnering with the tribe again and revisiting the Cebu path that we didn't get to complete because at the time they had planned for housing tracts back there. Is why they did not want to put a permanent improvement to finish that path to Cebu. So, we need to revisit with the tribe again, and is that a reality? Because that's a great
That'd be
drop off
great,
place.
yeah.
Get all of West Bishop really coming right there.
Right. And then we have the plan from the Meadow Creek area.
Yeah, we have our ATP, we will reapply this year for ATP money to rebuild the current bike path and then extend it over to the Cebu school path. And then Caltrans, as we know, is building the sidewalks on North Sierra Highway. So now we've created a safe way for kids to get from that part of Bishop to school.
Right, and then we just need
Downtown.
downtown, yeah.
We also
Yeah.
need to invest in our digital signage for speed limits, stop signs, things like that within the residential neighborhoods. So I've been working with Ilya on any grant that's gonna come up, that's gonna help us fund that. For whatever reason, those pieces of equipment are becoming astronomically expensive. But it's something we're gonna continue to aggressively pursue and start getting those up.
And we currently have it in the budget.
Even if it's just a regular
for this year.
sign
Right,
on our street.
right, like the illuminated stop signs, the speed limit signs on the higher traffic streets, we get a lot of complaints, over behind the park and different areas like that where we can really start making an impactful difference as far as traffic. So it doesn't always have to be police ticket enforcement, it can just be educational enforcement.
Yes.
So that's kind of what our goal is. So that's part of my plan later, but it kind of segues right into what Destin's talking about here, is that those are some of the things we're looking at too.
What we can also do with this point with the mobility and walk friendly town, it's to have our program where we partner with homeowners to build sidewalks on
Right.
all of our streets.
Correct.
So as soon as that we have that out there, that's gonna help a lot.
Put in the signs. Yes, I agree. And I get to have that part in my infrastructure.
Good.
And this is great. The conversation is great. And I don't, expect, I purposely didn't hand this out too early because I didn't want everybody to pick it apart. And I wanted it to be a conversation instead of everybody be pointed already to what they wanted to say. So that's why we may give a lot of topic, but that's all right. Well, it's somewhere in there.
I have to agree with the mayor, I think, and something I'll look into. I appreciate it, the dialogue here tonight. I'm gonna see about pursuing a potential working with some of our local cyclists and maybe see if they want to help me do a bike to school program so they can start educating the kids on how to properly ride to school, how to stop at the intersections, how to properly wear helmets, things like that. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'll look into that.
Yeah, there are many kids that bike to school. I send Dustin pictures of the bike rack every once in a
Yeah.
while. This is dismal.
Maybe we can change it though.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and a program like that would really be nice to add a parent component too, because I think that's half of the fear is that.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly, getting to school, because I've talked to him enough times and maybe sooner or later it'll hit home. Is, is let's talk about having a drop off on Home Street where nobody can drive up the Pine Grove or Elm to the end. They drop off at Home Street and then parents, they work together, the school and everybody, to have a group of parents that help get these kids from there to there. Eliminate, Home Street is a hard one because it's a major way to get from the north end of town to the south or vice versa. But once people in Bishop start learning, guess what? 8 o'clock in the morning, that's not the way to drive. And start creating as a safe way for kids to get dropped off right there. Because that is a mess. Everybody can testify to the mess.
You've seen the street map, or there's a street allocated for, something to go right through school property.
Yes. We were a long ways on and then the money fell apart at the end, but the school liked the idea. You bring in Sunland Line, make an intersection there, go right up. It would take a little bit of hospital parking, move it back maybe in some of the school. And then have basically a turnaround at the end and the parents go in there at a signalized intersection. Take some of the heat off of that. But Cebu, I think it would be a better spot to do it. And the infrastructure is almost all there. There's just several hundred feet of path left to go.
I mean, I think, yeah, again, we need to come up with these ideas that serve multiple purposes, right?
Yes.
So one of the reasons that it's so impacted is that we don't have many north-south thoroughfares through around town. And that's why everybody ends up having to go to Main Street to go up. And so if we could definitely come up with a project that would address more than just the school drop off, and maybe that's also the one that keeps
going
through, that would so keeping that sort of stuff in mind.
You could even tie it to economic development, because if we did have a bike path, that could also dovetail as like a walking path or a rollerblading path. It could be something that tourists could do, like, oh, I'm in Bishop, what do I do? Oh, there's a 3-mile loop around town that gets you, and it's this like beautiful loop that also is a bike path, walking path, like a lot of communities have. Maybe not.
Multi-use path.
Yeah, multi-use path. Yeah. Could get kids to school, could be a tourist attraction and just a good mobility.
Well, and it might be interesting to ask the grant writers, because there is safe route to school money out there. And we could
Yes.
definitely prove that we don't have one
Yeah,
for
exactly.
walkers and bikers. And so maybe we could get them thinking about that. And again, it would serve the purpose for a lot of people, not
Yeah.
just the kids.
And it's time that I'm gonna put that down, is to revisit our safe route to school path. Because we do have a designated safe route to school that was done many years ago. It goes up basically Grove Street, gives everybody that intersection with the light up Grove. That's why we built all the sidewalks down there. But if you probably ask the school, and most people, they have no idea that even exists.
Yeah.
So we need to revisit it and then enhance it. Incorporate the east side of town as a safe way to get there, because we'll talk about.
Well, it's scary because the buses go down Grove and you have your kid on their bike with the buses and they're little and it's, negotiating. I've seen kids that they want to ride their bike on the sidewalk and you try and train them, like, that's actually not the safest place to ride your bike. You gotta ride it in the street. It's tough with the buses, it's intimidating.
Well, and not sure because Karen and I live on that side, but the east side is really where you see the majority of the walkers
Mhm.
coming from.
Yes,
And so, to find a route for them is probably pretty important.
agreed.
Sounds good. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll add that.
I hear tunnel under Main Street. Overpass.
An overpass?
Overpass.
We can double as deer crossing.
On Main Street.
Yeah,
Well, maybe turtles.
Go get Caltrans to approve that, sure.
yeah, that'll happen too.
Porterville's been waiting for like 15 years already.
Yeah.
We've
We
been
had
waiting longer
underpasses
than
in
that.
LA, they were scary.
But I definitely think we should, one of our priorities should be to address the mobility roles. Because it's
Yeah.
pretty bad. And we have shirked on that for quite a while. I did read the traffic study, the mobility study that Caltrans had done like back probably 20 years ago. And there were a bunch of concrete actions in it, some that were city related, some that were county related, some that were Caltrans related. And Caltrans was the only one who actually followed through on everything they said they would do.
They did, huh?
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Well, that was a long time ago. It'd be interesting to look at those and as a group and
But-
see what they look like and if there's
Getting back
anything we
to
can do.
that is investing is a mobility study again, because it's way beyond our capability of time wise or anything, so.
Right.
Okay,
So can we talk a little about the homelessness pieces on this?
Yes.
first and second page?
yeah, I think it starts there around the last bullet page on the front, right? City and public safety partners continue to work with local partners to assist persons experiencing homelessness. And I think it's even more evident and clear with what's going on with IMACA. And how do we get more actively, involved in partnering or organization? What does that look like to us as a city to address that? And it's not a city only problem, but it's kind of one of those things where it seems like a lot of these problems are turned around to Joe's famous words, they'll take care of it. They'll take care of it. At some point, we got to get involved to make it happen.
Don't forget to involve the county because they get the
There's
state
the
money
real day.
to help the homeless.
Yeah, and I think that
They're gonna take care of it.
having Megan McCammon over there at the county now as in an actual role to talk, to deal with this stuff, working with her, and I know Elaine talks with her often, I do as well. Is start building that relationship and talking about those things. And not just housing, but all the things that go along with homelessness and housing. The safe parking area, I think, is always something that gets talked about a lot, but to me, that's not solving the problem. That's just, we've given them a temporary, but finding places for these people to live and do things like that is more the answer than telling them to go park in the parking lot.
I think this is something that it should be a high priority for county and city. Because last year, the county didn't approve the safe parking, where people spend months and a lot of money in getting it ready and done. And now with IMACA may not providing this support anymore, then who's going to do it? IMACA was going to do it on behalf of the county, and the county said no. So now we need to reach out to the county and say, okay, what is your plan to address this issue? And how can we work together? Because a lot of the homeless population, it is located within the city limits. So it is a problem that is affecting us. During all of those meetings, public meetings that they had last year, all of the comments from the school officials, from the community members were about help the homeless, but not in my backyard. Yeah. So not close to school, not in the church, send them way over there out there. That was the theme of all of the comments. We don't want them close to the school.
By the school, we don't want them in downtown.
Yes.
We
We don't want them.
But they're there anyway. They're there anyway.
But
We don't want
they
them there, but they're there.
So, yes, and like I said, the county gets state funding to help the homeless. The city doesn't, but we need to work together.
Are there communities that have had successful programs that we could model from? Because I feel like, why reinvent the wheel?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The county has a pretty solid plan. Justin provided me, I've looked at it. It's pretty good. But I've also shared with Councilmember Kong, that there are Mountain View, I think I gave you, and there was two, I think a couple other cities, that they have actual city ordinances and policies for the police department, public works, and everybody, every partner in the city who's involved in it as to what their role is. I've had multiple conversations with Larry Emerson in regards to this project. One of the problems we're running into right now, and Destin, I had to help with an issue a couple weeks ago. What's happening now are the homeless in the cars are taking up all the truck parking out on Highway 6. And they're taking up the truck parking, they're blocking the restrooms and different things like that. So when they did their point in time count, I directed them out there to some of those areas because one of the homeless ladies stopped me in the park one day when I was over there with my family, and we talked quite extensively about some of the issues that they're having and things like that, which I was glad she told me because I didn't know. But obviously we need to take a look at something. But like I told Larry, my big concern was, he said this whole group was going to be made up of volunteers that were going to work 24/7, 365, which we know is going to be great until the weather's 15 degrees at 2 o'clock in the morning and people don't want to go out and do their shifts. And first place they're going to call is Bishop PD or Inyo County Sheriff. And, you know, then we're dealing with something, and that's the anti-goal of what we want to do is we want these people to feel safe. They can park there. A lot of them don't like the police. We want to be a partner with them, but we don't want them to think that we're policing them. So that's kind of where my sticking point is, that we got to get around and get community groups on board.
So I'd like to look at an ordinance, the ordinances that the chief showed me were really great. And sort of were overall maps of what we could do to help the homelessness issue without necessarily having the bodies to do it. But in addition to that, I hate to say that this awful stuff that's happening with the market is an opportunity, but it really is in some ways an opportunity for us to sort of take a breath and relook at it with new eyes and new people, and see what it is that we can do and what the best option is. That safe parking looked great at the time. Is that the best solution right now? I'm not sure it is. Why? So I like the idea of the city county community task force. I think that DWP ought to be involved, and the Forest Service and BLM ought to be involved, because those are the other places that the homeless people with cars. And if we're going to address this as a whole, we really should look at all of the sides of the issue and see what it is that we can do with our limited resources and things. But
there were conversations in the past that the governor's office, and again, this is all stuff I dealt with in the valley, that the state has taken over tons of railroad land throughout the state because of the fact that they're doing different things with it, because the railroads really don't operate anymore. So some cities have actually taken those lands, and because they're fenced and everything already, and they're using them for a place to put the homeless that they're safe, they check in and out and things like that. I mean, I'm just curious to see if, DWP, Edison, one of the huge landowners around here, should probably have a place like that they could give us. I mean, LA, whether it's LA here or LA down there, it's a problem they're used to dealing with.
Yeah, but I deal with this at big California cities. It comes up every single meeting. It's a problem that we seem to be chasing our tail on this one. That there's no wind in here. It grows faster than the answers that come out of it. The only even close to successful thing I heard out of big California cities is the city of Victorville has a huge problem. But their answer to it, unfortunately, could not exist here in Bishop, was abandoned hotels, abandoned properties that had gone broke or defunct. The city picked them up, converted them into homeless housing and the problem is we can house people all day long, we can build parks all day long, we can fenced areas, whatever, but how do you solve the problem? And it ties into a lot of what our conversations are going to come up, the fact that we have a housing problem here, we have a job problem here, there's economic problems that we're in a way creating it by doing almost nothing. So to fix the problem, we have to you know, there's some parts in here, work with local mental health. And I know there's some examples out there where you started having collaboration between counties, private entities. There's gotta be funding sources, whether it's state, whether it's us. But it's a problem that until you solve the reason for the homeless, you're creating, I don't,
So, I mean, with all due respect, Karen, I don't necessarily agree with creating this task force that involves the Forest Service and BLM and DWP, because as we all know, bureaucracy is bureaucracy, and that's just gonna grind everything to a halt. So what I would support is, yes, the city and the county develop a task force, figure out a plan on what to do, and then bring them in with the kind of support that we would want from those agencies.
Sure, that'll work
So,
too.
That,
And maybe on the front end, do a little, have individual discussions with them and find out what they're hearing about their land.
right,
And then take that to the smaller group. That works for me.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes a lot of sense, because those big bureaucracies, implementing anything will never happen
right.
in our 5-year goal time.
And I would say, with also those agencies, they are, it obviously is a problem that affects them. I mean, we see with DWP, one of the obvious things is there are fires that break out on their land from people experiencing homelessness at times. And so I think if we can partner with the county and come up with a plan, then we can pitch it to those agencies for funding so that we can implement. That would be the approach.
Just to touch on the points that Jim made, and not to get too far into the weeds, but the governor did just come up with a thought process about the other side of homelessness, the reasoning behind. And he's proposing some changes in the mental health system and the way that I think actually it's a terrible name, but I think he's actually calling it mental health court, where there's no punitive action, but it's a place in which you could get people set up and into services. And it's still all in the very infant stages, but I think that you're correct that there are lots of fundamental societal reasons for homelessness. I personally believe it doesn't mean we shouldn't address the other part of it.
you have to address, but you have to eventually cure the disease instead of just putting new Band-Aids on every time.
Well,
Exactly.
so the state of Utah actually had a really great program to reduce homelessness, and the solution was pretty simple: give them homes. And it actually was extremely effective. And then people became, some of them, of course, were mental health issues, and then they had partnership. And so that, I think, there are lots of ways to go about it. And I think for the context of this meeting, I think these are great things that the city and the county community task force could explore and look at what other things are out there, because we're not going to solve them. So.
Agreed.
Well, and then just the last bullet on there is, and I think it's an important one, is establishing a relationship or a more collaborative relationship with the tribe. You know, they have a lot of resources, they have a lot of, they're have the same needs that we have right now. And, it seems like we kind of, the county deals with that, that's not the county, but I think we can partner with them better. So
We should have.
not to rush things, we're an hour in and I don't want to get off of the goal. No, I don't want to but I want to make sure that we're comfortable with, we have all these bullet points that staff put on there. I think Elaine is capturing those. And the goal is to actually have something that's a working document when we get done. Does everybody feel like we're capturing what we need to capture? Elaine, you're doing a lot of typing over there. Are we getting there where we need to be? Because I think the idea is that these aren't exactly all financial goals, but they're part of our plan.
Absolutely.
I think it's a good working, so far the conversations led to some good bullet some points within the points for you guys to work on.
Yes, I agree. And I just want to make sure.
I'm not doing that soon.
All right, so. Copy. Does anybody need a quick bathroom break or anything before we move on to the next one? It's probably a little easier, not easier maybe, but it's more definitive about what it is. So that was a broad subject, that first one. So sustaining public infrastructure. You know,
We skip community engagement.
did I skip by one?
Well, that's really short.
Community engagement.
Did I get it out? Oh, I'm sorry, got it out of order. I apologize on
Is
that.
that right?
Jim's had,
All right, so community engagement. You know, I think our first topic got definitely touched into almost every topic that's here today, which is fine. Develop, produce, and support community events that celebrates Bishop's history and diversity. We try to bring some of what Bishop is all about, events downtown, you know, and we just exactly just touched on this. So I think that one, unless anybody has to add to that first bullet point, I think it's there. Engagement through regularly updating the city's wide website to be user-friendly and have current information and timely updates. I think that was a big one that we could keep up with much better on there. And again, increase, I would love to, I don't know how we do it, you know, but increase awareness of council and commission meetings. You have an idea on that one?
I mean, the reality is, it's the horrible, ugly belly of social media.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's
but then, I don't know, like, you can't control what people post on that.
exactly.
It can get nasty.
Well, you can have no comments.
Can we?
Yeah, in fact, most cities don't allow any public to comment on it, because then we're sorting through and
Yeah,
regulating
just
who we like and what we don't like, and we don't wanna go there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's Mr. John, you remember when Keith Caldwell? We had this, and I bring it up, it's gonna be almost like the Fountain Park, it just keeps getting shot down,
I like the fountain.
like a bad airplane. Like a Russian fighter jet. The coastal geothermal years ago, and Keith redirected the money over to a video for Promote Bishop, that came out all pretty video. They remember they agreed to give us $5,000 for LED signing. And I look at the Bishop schools have it, every school in the valley has signage in front, and I look at City Hall. If we were to put a sign out there, we got 14,000 vehicles per day driving up and down Line Street in front of City Hall. But could we look into LED sign out there that we control what the message is? Hey, city council meeting Monday night at 6 o'clock. New park event coming up this weekend, sign up. I mean, not everyone does social media, not everyone pays attention to it, but you pay attention to a sign as you drive by it 4 times a day. And I just see it as an investment that we can control whatever message we want to put on.
We could also, I just ask Tani to add, the fact that we have our meetings coming up in her newsletters. And she has a huge range, and just be like, hey, city council meetings, the, 4th and 15th and.
Do we have numbers of how it's been on YouTube since we've been doing them? And
I don't know.
I mean, I know what it's like when we were.
We can
when you
go
guys were-
look at, we can look at statistics on Granicus.
okay, yeah, we should look at it, because
We can report.
Yeah.
I feel like I would like to see more public engagement in those,
Yeah.
because I think Jose said it once, that somebody says, well, I didn't know you were doing that. Well, they come to a council meeting or pay attention to the agenda. How do we get that? So that people are seeing things instead of hearing about it afterwards.
Well, the way we do it is not the way people are trying to find information, like people don't read public notices in the paper.
Yeah, exactly. They don't.
But they do.
I like the idea of the sign. And we should turn it off at night. one of the middle school is so bright.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bright.
And it's not always functioning correctly.
A nice little monument sign that was, the toned it down to where it was very legible, but not overbearing.
Yeah, I think it'd be lovely. I mean, it'd be great for all of the park things, all of the signups and that.
We did talk about putting one at the park at one point as well, with the old chamber signs.
Would Caltrans let you do that?
Probably not. We can work.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
Good job, Jim.
We'll just do it for direction.
Good job, Jim. So that was.
School probably, work on that.
And
Line
then-
up every calendar.
and then this is when I think Rich was, one of his ideas, that last one there about the community program geared toward at-risk teens. Wasn't that, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but being more involved with the schools and stuff to try to, and I think, maybe it was Karen, we were talking about, you know, the after-school program, we got the little guys, and then there's high school kids that do what they do, but that middle school where they're so impressionable, that was you, Stephen.
That's me. Yeah, it's the
How do
East
we-
Side Student Center.
That's the seems to be the troubling age when you make a decision which direction you're going and helping guide those directions and working with the school. So I think that's kind of what we were talking about in there.
Right.
So I think we got through that one then. That's-
Pumpkins.
So I didn't, where you are on public infrastructure.
But Steve would
Okay.
have to sit down.
So-
Because, you know, you couldn't stand up on top of the fire truck with the, be careful.
No, because obviously it would have to be high enough for Caltrans to let big rigs go through until we build a truck route.
Before we move to the next subject, I'd like to mention the other elephant in the room. More than 30% of our community doesn't speak English well enough.
Mhm.
All of our activities by law have to be bilingual. We need to have interpreters at our meetings. All of our public notices, anything, any event, any activity, we need to promote it in English and Spanish. We can do better job at reaching out to the Hispanic community. Let me just put it that way.
No, I agree.
So,
You really.
notices for council meetings, for activities at the park, for everything. It needs to be published in Spanish as well. Social media, I mean, people are on Facebook all the time, even Spanish speaking people. I have relatives and friends that are on Facebook all the time, so.
Yeah, and I think that would hopefully engage them more to be part of the process too, with the.
Yeah.
Because you're exactly right, they're a huge part of our population now, and we want them to be part of this, of our community and not apart from the community.
Right.
Mhm.
Good point.
Thank you.
So public infrastructure. So again, you know, we have some goals that we want to get done right away on this one. The East Line Street Bridge replacement, that's currently, you know, it's funded with Caltrans STIP money, but it is in the process of being designed. We're moving along with that. Potentially could be built around 2024, 25. So that will, hopefully that there'll be, you know, no cost to the general fund in that one or very little.
I will say when we're doing that, we should make sure that if we have to spend a little bit of money to make it more aesthetically pleasing, we should, because that is gonna be at least for people flying into the airport right now, it's the entryway into town.
So,
It's the
yeah,
first impression.
to add to that is, been working with Mike Arante, the public works director at the county, you know, and they have a lot of gas tax money, we, you know, millions, and we get a few tens of thousands. And Mike has basically already said that he will pony up to help the aesthetics of that bridge, because a quarter of it's theirs.
Yeah.
So, you know, and he agrees that it shouldn't, the airport, the whole 9 yards, so yes, that will be part of it. Develop and implement wayfinding signage plan.
Yes.
We, actually applied for some money, right, Elaine, the Clean California's, was it Clean California? That actually didn't get funded, but we've talked about this for almost forever too. We need to, I think that's one of our, that needs to be in our budget this year. I think what we were talking about, you know, the basic wayfinding part and then break apart the monument signs at the end of the town, those were the huge expense.
The total budget that we put in for the grant was $400,000, but that was inclusive of design, engineering, monument signage at each of the entrances to Bishop, and then all of the wayfinding signage that would be downtown as well for pedestrians and vehicles. I don't remember off the top of my head what the budget was for just the design component.
But yeah, I think, you know, we, with our budget, we keep that in mind, you know, the big monument signs that are in town could come later, but actually getting the wayfinding, I would like to just put that in our budget this year.
I would agree.
I agree.
And that was, I think, a really good example of in the Clean California grant, when the projects were awarded, so many of them were for that exact thing. They were for monument signage and wayfinding signage in their communities. And I think one of the reasons potentially that we weren't funded is because it wasn't shovel ready. And we had to include the design and engineering in our budget. So that does seem like a low hanging fruit implementation opportunity for us to have a plan that's ready in case grant funding is available in the future.
No, I think that should definitely be approved.
If we're gonna have this discussion though, are you gonna, is this gonna be Bishop unique signage? I know we've talked about it, like you said, forever.
What is Bishop unique?
Well, that's what we gotta figure out. But is
Some
are we
rods.
gonna do a bunch of Caltrans signs and put them up so we can see where we're going? Are they gonna have a Bishop?
The intent is that it would be a placemaking element. And so it would reinforce a regional identity and brand.
And aesthetic, right?
And aesthetic.
And yeah, it'd be vibrant, it'd be not just, like you said, if they're green and signs with white letters, nobody even's gonna see them.
Yeah.
We want, but we want to not only be wayfinding, but add to the community while we're doing it.
And so would this also include like discussions of like, or the wayfinding, does that include things like follow this path for commerce, follow this path for art, those sorts of things, or?
So I think there's lots of different examples of how communities have implemented this in other places. So I think you might be referring to an example that we looked at some time ago where it was a little bit more creatively like put, it was like artwork on the sidewalk as opposed to signs. So I mean, I think within this, we'd have an enormous amount of flexibility. We'd have all the flexibility in the world to design it, you know, how we want it to reflect and be implemented in our community. But I think traditionally wayfinding just talks to things like, you know, kiosks and signage in downtown to direct you to key locations.
It definitely could be phased in, start with the kiosks and then move on to the more artistic stuff on the ground. As new sidewalks are built, we add those to it. You know, I don't think it's just a simple cut and dry thing. It should grow and grow.
But I think it's gonna be similar to what we talked about, get it started, let the investment part of it. If you can get 10 cars a day to stop and spend $10 a day, what's the sales tax on that? It'll pay for the more signage.
Yeah.
So get it started, get it going, and then have the framework basically there. Now we wanna highlight this art thing. Frameworks there.
Yeah.
Finally.
Okay, so this is a big one, but it just needs to be at least started to be talked about, is developing plans for a new joint wastewater treatment plant for the greater Bishop area. I actually have a grant into Department of Water Resources for $500,000 to do that design. You know, it obviously it'll be, hopefully we're smarter than our predecessors and we build one plant next time and not two side by side. And I think that with the BAWA, we've gotten past that now and we're ready to do it. So the city applied for it. We are being disadvantaged community. We're ripe for funding for that. The district was not, so we'll take that on. It'll be together, but we're gonna get the grant money for it. So that's a huge amount of money. And then, you know, a new plant is somewhere, I don't want to scare the heck out of everybody, but it could be anywhere between $12 and $20 million.
Times two.
Yeah, and by the time in 5 years, exactly, 5 years, because it already went in about 6 years, it went from $11 million to almost 20 million for the plant that we talked about 6 years ago. But with that comes how to pay for it. That's gonna be a biggie. You know, we have some, I believe we'll have some good partners, and the tribe will benefit from the plant, so they could be a big contributor to it. The city will probably be still, DWR always has grants. They're always happening every year. It isn't just because of this extra infrastructure money. So they have up to $6 million that would probably cover our share if we could get one of those grants. You know, so, but we also, you know, you gotta look at, with a new plant comes increased costs of O&M. You know, so we need to start looking, we have a rate study coming up, I think, next year. And we need to really start looking at where those rates need to be for sewer to start funding. Because the biggest need in public works right now, or the biggest issues, are going to be sewer over the coming years.
Didn't you tell me, our rates need to be at a certain level to even be eligible for funding?
That's right, yeah. So
Okay,
in order to be eligible for any of that money, our rates need to be, I believe, what was it, 1.5% of the annual household income, which equates to about $60 a month.
so, and we're below that,
Yeah, we're at 30, no, we're at 40 now, 42.
okay. We'd have to
So it's a
raise it
substantial
18 bucks.
increase. But, you know, the state says, you know, they're very clear that we can't help you if you can't help yourselves.
Got it.
So, you know, that we need to look at how do we get there? And, you know, it may not be this, you know, we hope we look at it. We don't really want things to, you know, you don't want to go backwards, you know, but water is doing very well right now. And the water we've taken care of for the last 15 years, or 20 years, we've taken care of a lot of our water stuff. So we're pretty sound there. So water fees don't need to go up necessarily, but it's the sewer side of it. Because we need to take our ratepayers into account. Can they get there? The next one, sidewalk safety. And I'd like, you know, to resurrect our sidewalk safety monitoring and maintenance plan. We've had a sidewalk safety program for years. We offer a homeowner, if they will pay for a contractor to do the concrete, we do all the removal, the preparation of the grade, get it ready for them. And the hardest thing that's been to sustain what's really slowed that program down is we've done so many street projects in the last 10 or 15 years that now when I go up and say, you know, it's your responsibility to maintain your sidewalks. So we'll help you out and pay for half of it, but you got to do the other half. And they go, well, you just built a whole brand new street over there and nobody paid for anything. It's been a hard sell to keep that, because the state law is that the adjacent property owner is responsible for their sidewalks. But how do you sell that when you're building brand new ones for everybody else? So I think in that plan is we need to start looking at, and I don't want to, it doesn't make sense to hodgepodge sidewalks, just put, this property owner wants one and wants to pay a little bit. So we put one there, but on either side, there's no sidewalk. So how do we come up with, you know, looking at blocks at a time, maybe, you know, which is a little different than the money that we put away for the $250,000 a year for a whole new street. I'm talking about sidewalks itself. And then I also, you know, something I'd like to, you know, maybe look at a little bit is we have sections of town, especially on the west side, because they have more sidewalks, where they have bad sidewalks. But the bad sidewalk might only be one panel. And so getting that somebody to a homeowner that has no idea, you're not going to get a contractor to come fix it. He's not going to come out there and do a $100 sidewalk job. So the public works can go out and assess, say, a block and find 10 of those little spots. We just tear them out and replace those sidewalks and make them safe again. So this is kind of twofold: new sidewalks, and I think the east side of town is very critical. We need them over there. And then on the west side of town, we concentrate on making the sidewalks safe that we do have over there.
And then how do we deal with residents that don't want sidewalk? in front of their
Well,
house?
that's another one, is because Hanby Street is a great example. When we did the Hanby project, they actually rallied together the whole street and sent a letter to City Hall and said, we do not ever want sidewalks at our house.
And it's really tragic that you can't walk. I mean, it's dangerous.
It's a dangerous street because there's a lot of people that walk down that street.
Yeah.
We use public safety as a leverage to say we have to have a sidewalk if
Well,
we
you
don't
know,
want it.
To be fair, what they, I think, were most concerned about was and what got them rallied together against it was the whole green strip and
Thank you.
sidewalk.
That's where I was going with this. So,
Because they didn't want to lose one yard.
yeah, and it's a lot of it. If you look around, a lot of houses at Bishop are very close to the property line. And so if you build a 10-foot sidewalk, it's right on their front door. But, you know, we have the option, because, and Jose, getting back what you're saying, we own 60 feet. So our typical city street is 40 feet wide, the pavement. And then we have 10 feet on either side. So that's ours. So, you know, it's not so much, you know, you hate to just say, we're gonna force sidewalks down your throat, but it is our project. And so we can look at going back, a 5-foot sidewalk is more than acceptable behind the curb.
Right, it doesn't have to have the green strip.
That's,
Yeah.
it's in our general plan, but we have especially if it's our own money, it doesn't have to be back there.
I say that's a smart move, just because of Bishop was so poorly designed.
Yeah.
That we do the best we can within the designs and we work out. But I like your concept, because I know from a public works standpoint, small jobs, we can do in-house, we don't have to go bid these out.
Yeah.
And just let's bite this cookie off, tiny bit at a time.
Yeah, let's get it going, and then, you know, at the end of the day, if somebody trips and falls on that sidewalk, it says it's the property owner's, or the adjacent property owner's responsibility. But they don't sue the property, the adjacent property, they sue the city of Bishop.
So is this general fund money?
That would be general fund money right there.
And not the 250,000 that we're saving every year?
Well, yeah, right now we earmark that to save for 4 to 5 years to do a whole complete, as much as we
So
can.
we could budget this in our next budget for sidewalks, just like.
Yeah, I can, we'll generate that number of what,
Okay.
how much should a block of sidewalk to do at a time?
The other thing that I would say is you should look into the JPIA. Because they do have money set aside for problematic sidewalks. Because when the city gets sued, they're stuck with the bill.
Yes,
So they do have a program, so we should look into that.
definitely, that's,
Yeah, I'd like to see us put this a little bit towards a priority, as it solves a lot of the problems in other parts of this document. That we start putting some money away and we start just biting off little bits, pieces with a plan, eventual end game, but start moving our way there. I think it's a good investment.
Yeah.
And to get us started with the sidewalks, wouldn't also help to have that program partnering with homeowners? That the homeowner buys the materials, the city does the labor?
I think that would be a good
To
starting
build a
point
new
to see
sidewalk?
how much interest we generate. Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, because, there's a lot of the people on South Second Street was very impressive. There was 2 homeowners that were kind of like, I don't want the sidewalks, it's messing up my yard. And then when we got done, their property was worth a whole lot more
Oh,
money.
it's
than,
such a much nicer
You
street.
end up with a $10,000 sidewalk and it made their house worth $60,000 more. And all of a sudden people saw the value of what really, besides the community value, is also the value to the homeowner.
I
So getting them
guess-
participate.
I guess for me, the idea that the city approved this rate hike, this tax that we asked them to do, and to then ask them to nickel and dime them over a bag of cement just seems a little much to me. That if what we're doing is we're taking this yucky piece of sidewalk, just a square, and fixing it to all the extra hassle and time and energy to get this homeowner to pay for part of it just seems onerous.
Yeah, and if we were to, really, if we were to put like, just say $25,000 into sidewalk repair, it'll go a long ways, doing, if the guys, 2 days of time out there and potentially 6 or 7 yards of concrete, that's $1,000. you could do a lot of repairs for that. And it would go a long ways to the public seeing that their money is being spent, their tax money is spent on them.
Are you talking about repair or like putting in a whole new strip?
No, I'm talking about repair.
Repair, okay.
Repair.
Yeah, I think we want to make that little part twofold, some new and repair.
So, I mean, I guess one of the things that we're talking about when we're talking about priorities for public infrastructure. Yeah, I mean, having an unsafe sidewalk is a problem, sure, we should address those. But I think what our public would benefit more from is a fiber network and high-speed internet to their house. Since we've already covered that most people don't walk around town. And so I would like to see that, at least a plan of how we could implement something like that in town, through all of town. Be something that we prioritize over, say, repaving city parking lots.
I agree completely.
As far as I know, the main infrastructure to have fiber optic into people's homes, it's already there. What needs to be done now is have the internet service provider linked in, so the link to connect the homes to that fiber optic that is already there.
No, so there's a fiber backbone that's running up through the whole valley, but it doesn't do the last mile to homes.
So they actually, the Suddenlink bought capacity on that backbone.
Right.
And then but the problem is that is one internet company too that charges.
It is connected, the hospital is connected.
Yes,
Yeah,
hospitals, government,
It runs
hospitals,
to the rear of the
schools.
park, it does not come up to Main Street from the rear.
Right. So when they were putting in the fiber backbone, they connected it to the public buildings, but not to the houses.
No, that's where Suddenlink comes, which is the internet internet service provider, where they built that.
They never built it, not
They
to the
did.
cities,
No,
not to the homes.
no.
And it's on.
How much would something like that cost the city? Like what?
So when we were at California League of Cities, they actually had one of the vendor booths there where they had a micro tunneling machine that was not very disruptive. And he was saying that for a town of 2 square miles, which wouldn't even be what we need to cover because that includes the park and all of those other areas, that it's just a matter of a few $1 million. So I think at the very least, we should prioritize finding out this. Obviously, there's we don't have a clear picture on what it is that the current status is. And so finding that out to make a plan.
And I think you're on the point, Stephen, that find out what the cost is. If we're waiting for Suddenlink to do this, or waiting for the state to do this, or waiting for the federal government.
Then we
to do
should
this,
just have an ISP and be done with Suddenlink. Our people, all of our residents would love us.
Yeah,
for
it's a
that.
huge investment. Yeah, it's easy to say, but
We
finding
want
that
to-
provider.
We want to make this investment, we make it
Yeah,
happen. Find it and make it.
Well,
I know a guy, just an who is very knowledgeable in the subject. He's the IT guy for the county, no, the county.
The office bed,
Office
yes.
bed.
Office of that, yeah.
Yes, in the school. So I think he can give us an overview of what's the current status, and that will help us to get
And I know
this starting point. So
the county's
I
also
can invite
working
him to come and talk to us.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna talk with Leslie because she's really actively involved with this right now too.
Right.
Well,
Trying to add it.
and I love that we're talking about it. I think it is a priority. I think it benefits citizens, everybody, people coming here economically, it creates its own benefits. Make sure we look 5 years on this one to see that we get this all the way done and they go, oh, we've got satellites now in your house. Or whatever they come up with, because I know the technology sometimes advances faster to go.
Sure.
So let's make sure that if we're gonna throw money around, that we're, there's some sustainability and some long-term value to it.
We'll put it in this list, but and then it'll be, I guess, homework to be all ready.
Because I know,
on there.
I've read some articles that there's some, got the little 4,000.
Tap into SpaceX sooner than later.
Yeah.
I remember I went to a meeting on this and we were like a served community, so we weren't eligible for.
They changed the requirement on it.
Oh, they did?
They did. So
Oh, nice.
Suddenlink was keeping us at 7 gigabits per second, which was the limit. And then now the state changed the requirement to 100 gigabits per
To
second.
be served.
To be an underserved.
Nice,
community.
okay.
They just changed that
Oh,
this
they
year.
did.
Okay,
Good.
that's great,
Yeah,
because that
so-
made us
So now we're
ineligible.
eligible for a lot more funding.
Oh, that's great,
Yeah.
okay.
So I would definitely like to see that.
We'll just add it on there. It's gonna.
And that might be something you could even use COVID funding for, you know, I mean, COVID funding for remote type work and, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that,
Keep people indoors.
I think that it would be great to have this rise to the top of the pile.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind that we have a lot of research and.
yeah,
understanding
exactly.
to do.
It's not an action item that we're gonna get built this year, but we're gonna start figuring it out.
Right.
And I think, and I know at one point in time, Kevin Carrancio, you remember, he started talking about this in the county, and I think he felt like Obsidian or something. He had a very well put together plan.
And Lone
for the
Pine
idea.
TV killed it,
Oh, but
Lone Pine TV killed it.
is that what killed it?
Yeah, because you couldn't have a public organization compete with like a private entity. And so you couldn't use like public dollars competing with like a private company that was
Oh, gotcha.
already.
We're
And Lone Pine TV was like, well, I'm gonna be the one to serve.
We'll run into the same thing.
Yeah,
because-
We
and
will,
so-
but that's finding that person.
So you could, so it got killed. I don't know if it was Lone Pine TV, but it was
No, I
killed
do,
because
I remember, it was
you
well
couldn't
developed.
compete. He was onto something. for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely was on to something.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so, and then back in the, you know, this is again in our sewer fees, but, you know, we have totally updated our water system nearly completely at this point and haven't really addressed sewer at all, the collection system. Most of our collection system is put in somewhere between 1903 and 1935. So it's all clay pipe. Yeah, but you know, it's great. We TV it and we keep track of it, but we get a lot of infiltration from groundwater. Those pipe, you know, it's time to start looking at the wastewater side like we did the water for a long time. And the scary part is these are all big ticket items, you know, and you know, right now we have about a little shy of $2 million. We're just gonna spend 900,000 building the trunk line, you know, so we gotta start building sewer up again, so we can address all these things. Just briefly, they conducted a feasibility study to combine Bishop Area water systems, which we're actively working with the state right now on a couple out here. But the reason I bring that up is that when we take in other systems, it then becomes revenue for the general fund. You know, because we don't have to charge the same as we charge our customers. And then you can also bring in revenue for our general fund. So it's something to look at. Plus, it's just a good project because it gets Joe fire hydrants all over the place that are working. He's been awful quiet over there, hasn't he?
Not my turn, anytime.
Well, we're gonna run out. I think we're gonna run out of time when we get to that page. So, let's see, continue with Caltrans to improve Main Street traffic conditions, implementation of a truck bypass, which I'll never quit thinking, you know, working with them, but it's not a City of Bishop thing, that's a Caltrans thing, they need to be partners on. We update the capital improvement plan again, look at that and update everything in the public works capital improvement plan. I didn't do it on purpose, I repaid city parking lots. The only reason I bring this up is our parking lots are in bad shape. They have cracks in them that are 3 inches wide and 3 inches deep. And another reason I bring it up is since the day I started with the city, that's been brought up every year at a retreat. And we just kind of keep pushing them down the road and.
Well, how much does it cost to repave a parking lot?
You're talking about, roughly $5 a square foot. You're looking at probably a couple $100,000 in a parking lot. And to be honest with you, I would not pave them again. I would build them out of concrete. There are 100-year parking lots and no maintenance, and the cost is almost the same. So,
What's the cost of a lawsuit, some troops on?
well,
Well, they're driving their car over here.
What about filling in those
We already
cracks on
just
the road?
determined nobody walks, right?
Are we responsible to do that?
to do what?
Fill in those cracks?
We do. We fill them in and then they come right back again.
We have some that are like
The asphalt is essentially shrinking over time, so you
6
patch it
to
and you
8
have 2 cracks.
inches wide cracks on Pioneer Way.
Remember the ones that used to be there? Oh,
No, they
yeah.
are there now.
Yeah, they're coming back again.
Yes.
That's one of the bad parts about asphalt, is it takes, it always shrinks forever. And then again, develop our shovel-ready projects plans, including environmental clearance and design. That one, I think we talked about that. We know that's a priority. Everybody here does them. We'll have that in our budgets. Rehabilitate parks and recreation facilities. How'd you sneak that in?
I don't know. That's just to reiterate.
It's on every page.
Thank you, Dustin, for putting that in there.
So actually implementing the pavement study, we already have a pavement study and the county we have a partnership through the LTC that they're gonna do our roads I think they're supposed to get to the city every 4 years. 3 to 4 years, so. But that pavement study is very important because in all your applications, your PCI of your asphalt needs to be where it is. And unfortunately, the majority of our asphalt is below poor, unless it's a brand new street. They're past maintenance, they're time to replace them. And that's why I put in here about replacing asphalt. And some of those things, we're just gonna have to, besides just grants, we're gonna figure out how to pave some of our streets that are falling apart at some point. Most of them are 60, 70 years old. Well, when we did Home Street, it was 60 years old. So this whole west side of town that was 15 years ago. So we're getting age on them. And I want to get them in this list and in our strategic plan. Safe routes to schools we talked about. Identify opportunities to preserve and celebrate historic resources.
I think we should preserve and celebrate our Clay.
That's our sewer plan. Thank you. And then actually, we get one of those 70-year-old lines is gonna be gone on, actually, it's all in the new line now. The old one's just gotta be removed. So I'm gonna bring you all a piece of that pie. Yeah. And then last but not least is something I added on that I just thought of in the last couple of days. I'd like to start moving our city fleets to electric vehicles where they're feasible to use our light trucks.
I'd like to have a city issued Tesla, please.
Yeah,
I've been trying.
I walk, so I don't need them.
You get you a hoverboard.
but
I don't think
But I just think it
Never broken
makes
arm.
sense at this point. We're a 2 square mile city. We work 8 hours a day. Our public works trucks at the end of a 20-year life have 70,000 miles on them. Electric just makes sense to have for us. And then looking at where gas is gone, because gas is gonna turn our budgets upside down in the next couple of months.
Chief, are there electric police car options?
Yes.
Yes and no, but not, Enterprise is not ready to go there yet. The technology's not ready. I already looked at that. I wanted to replace, because we did the 4, I wanted to do 2 electric, and the technology's just not there yet.
So from the standpoint of like stealth wise, sneaking up on people.
Right, because we talked about it and where we would run into some of the problems with the one, they would have to be Tesla to really have effective charging stations. So if we were transporting to, Independence or anything, that's where we'd run into problems. They said we're just not there yet. because they were telling me their vans, Ford's Econoline van, the past 12 passenger has 125-mile range on it, only it's been tested with just the driver. So if you put people in there in that weight, it won't even go that far.
Friendly people don't sneak up on people.
Well, the good thing about the enterprise is we're cycling through this product quickly, so.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think it's a great goal.
Should we take a break, 10-minute break?
Yes.
All right, 6:46, we'll reconvene at.
We don't have, we have actually meetings until 9 if we need to.
Yes.
Okay.
Probably only Europe.
So we'll take 10 minutes.
1.7 is on.
Move,
I'm unmuted.
yeah, are you ready, Robin?
Turn your mics off.
All right, so the next topic, enhancing economic vitality. And Elaine's been super quiet, so she gets to jump in. Here's her turn.
Good evening, council. It hasn't been relevant to me yet. What I've chosen to do in putting these goals together is to not reinvent the wheel. The city invested in an economic development plan in 2015 that I still consider to be very highly relevant and well put together. It's one of the elements of the general plan, and the general plan is a 20-year plan. Unlike some of my colleagues in their departments, I'm not presenting 3 to 5 year goals necessarily, because planning works on a longer range horizon. But I did reiterate the high level goals that were identified in the economic development plan. As I said, they're still relevant. And if you go to the economic development plan, under each of those, there are actions. And in the back, it becomes more specific with implementation actions. And one thing that I would say that I'm very, very pleased with is how much the city has accomplished in those actions. I think people are very familiar with the phrase, we don't want to write another plan that sits on a shelf. And what stops plans from sitting on shelves is the investment in implementing them. And there's a lot of actions that the city has accomplished within what felt like 5 years, but is now apparently 7 years with the economic development plan. The largest of which is obviously supporting development of commercial air service in Bishop. So with that one, we can largely just check off an entire goal, which is an enormous accomplishment. Destin did add an action under there that I think is important, which is to develop a regional airport advisory council to grow and sustain the Bishop Airport. It's wonderful that we have commercial air service in Bishop, but certainly going to need to continue to stay engaged with the county and the town of Mammoth Lakes and Mono County to make sure that that's financially feasible, to expand, air service year round if appropriate, and so on and so forth. So even though that goal's been accomplished, still work to be done there.
Can I add to that real quick?
Yeah.
I spoke with a gentleman in the last month by the name of Guy Ruel. I'm not sure if he's from New Jersey. And somehow Clint Quilter and him became tied together over this airport. He has a great love for this area. And so this what he is a consultant, and that's all he does is airport stuff. So he's very tied in with Mammoth Mountain. And he contacted me, and we're starting the discussions of putting this regional group together and get Mammoth to buy in. But how do we sell this airport to make it grow? I learned that if they get $150,000 from the FAA today. Once they reach 10,000 employments, they get $1 million from the FAA. So there's room to grow in getting those people in this plane, but he knows how to organize this, so him and I are going to start working together to put this regional group together. Because it's unfortunate there wasn't really that much of that collaboration in the beginning, which I understand things happen fast and in a hurry. So just wanted to add that. Sorry, Elaine.
No, thank you so much, Dustin. And I'd also like to highlight that under, I'm going to probably guess goal 1, we know some of the actions identified were rezoning downtown to allow for residential, creating design guidelines for beautification. So there's actions that we can say have been implemented, and I think that that's really exciting. Another one is supporting the development of a small business resource center in downtown Bishop, and Inyo County has spearheaded that project. The city of Bishop has been engaged in the development of the business plan and locating it in downtown, and it's something that we should continue to invest in to retain local businesses, develop succession plans, and train entrepreneurs to open new businesses to support local businesses in our downtown, small and local businesses. So I'd encourage the council to revisit that document. One of the other things that is fun about the planning realm is that there's a lot of internal consistency and a lot of the recommended actions in these different plans are interreferential, for lack of a better term. I'm not thinking well this evening, I guess. So, you know, coming out of this economic development plan in 2015, there was conversations about supporting housing and rezoning. When we did the EPA action plan in 2017, it was sort of that same conversation. And so you'll see that the actions under each of these different plans support each other, and they are ongoing, and they will require, you know, continued attention and investment over time. So there is, in some of them, there's a greater level of specificity that we can, you know, talk about specific projects for funding, but broadly, economic development goals are a very wide time horizon, very broad landscape. So also within the economic development realm, I included investing in implementing the housing element, because as we know, housing and economic development are critically linked in Bishop and in the Eastern Sierra. And two tangible goals that are very much in front of us are continuing to work with partners to make sure that Silver Peaks is constructed, since we have an opportunity with that acreage there. And as we discussed earlier this evening, consider a feasibility study to see if there's a higher and best use for the land the residential land that we own at Sunrise Mobile Home Park. I might add to that, and I didn't include it here, codifying the mixed use overlay, which we have not yet done, which will allow for that residential use in downtown as well. And hopefully incentivize developers to repurpose underutilized real estate, commercial real estate. And actually, I guess does go right into the next one, which is investing in implementation of the downtown specific plan, which we're nearing completion, and we're getting to a place where we can start to institutionalize the policies and the recommendations coming out of that. One of the recommendations in that plan is to investigate the feasibility of different financing alternatives, such as a business improvement district or an enhanced infrastructure financing district. There's actually an entire section at the end of the plan that talks about different financing options. And that's one of those actions that is interreferential. You know, I think it's discussed in the economic development plan, it's discussed in the EPA action plan. It's a recommendation that different consultants have brought to the city again and again to try and implement some of those downtown improvements that we would like to see. We have included investigating the value of a retail attraction consultant for the Big K, and to address some of the other durable good retail needs. And I think I use the word investigate here because specifically to borrow Jim's phrase, is to be very cautious and cognizant of what the return on investment is there. Both of those properties are encumbered with so many constraints. And so certainly wouldn't want to make promises. There are consultants who specialize in retail attraction and placement of these types of stores. But we would want to go into any type of investment there, eyes wide open about what all the constraints associated with what those properties are. And certainly, some of the other limitations about brick and mortar retail expansion generally. And Desta, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to the point about the Kmart properties here. You want me to finish first?
I would like to add in there, and Dean kick me or whatever if I'm wrong, but are we at a point where if this is just going to continue to stay where it is, as is, we need to pursue other legal actions to find out if there actually, is there collusion, is there monopoly, is there some way, because I know at one point in time there was, the state attorney general had some traction behind looking at that. I mean, I'm just gonna be honest, it's just gonna sit like that, unless we hire somebody to come find somebody to move into there, or we pursue different avenues to try to make something happen though. And I
Well,
think
I think that big durable goods retails stores have never been friends to Bishop. You know, as much as it would be nice to walk into a Kmart and buy a white t-shirt or some young boys underwear. We don't, you know, those types of stores have done no favors to our community. They don't, it's all about the bottom line. I don't think we really, I mean, sure, they add to the sales tax but I just don't think they're the types of businesses that serve us. I think they're, they take from us. So I would not be interested, I wouldn't want to spend any money looking to, I mean, if they want to come here, sure, but I don't see it in our best interest to advocate them coming to our community. They've done nothing, and we're surviving without them.
I see where you're at. Yeah, there's goods and bads to both of them. But when I go out to the dump every Sunday and look at Amazon Mountain and the tax dollars that we receive off of that are a total of zero. You know, when Kmart was here, I think you're using a bad example of a company that was.
But look at JCPenney, like they're all, like they all just sell
Well, they-
us dry.
I'll say there.
But I didn't have to wait for the UPS guy to show up to check my underwear. So it's kind of, there's some benefits to it. And I think, you know, you're gonna have to find the right model, and the community's gonna have to hold some standards there. I mean, it's a crapshoot, I mean, it's a gamble, but
I'd
Amazon
rather,
Mountain provides nothing to us right now.
I'd rather
Well,
see people like.
Actually, we do get sales tax revenue
From
from
Amazon,
Amazon
yeah.
when it's shipped into town.
Yes.
We do actually get that. Disney,
We do. They did change it a bit, where the cities that have distribution
Distribution centers
centers
get
get more.
yeah, and that's one of the things that
They
the
get the majority-
big
they get-
California
And
cities.
they're trying to find it.
But I mean, in this case, I mean, I have to. It's a matter of economics, right? These big box stores, they just don't do well in our area because we don't have the population base for it.
As
And
we talk about expanding, where are these people who would come up here, camp going? I mean, I know they'll fill in holes, but
they're going to mom and pop shops, like Beside Sports, Sage Summit. You can get all of your camping needs from those areas. I think one of the big concerns, and I think it is a valid concern, is like, yeah, where do people get underwear and stuff?
so before we decide which path this is, then maybe we need to reach out to the citizens. Have some kind of survey. Do you guys want it? Yes or no?
Well, but I think if we're doing that, what we should be doing is, do you guys want it at, this is the level that the city would have to be subsidizing to have it? This is how much of your taxpayer money is gonna be going to subsidize this, because those, like Karen was saying, those businesses, they're about the bottom line. And the only way that we're gonna attract them is if we throw money at them. And so is it worth it to like throw $500,000 to bring Pennies or a Target to like be here with jacking up their prices to like keep it going? I mean, I guess that's where.
I think we can get out and somehow get the pulse of the public on it, what they determine. I mean, we're in charge of spending their money, so we have to kind of figure out what they want to do.
Sure.
To Dustin's point, as far as the properties are locked up right now. Yeah, we were starting to go somewhere with the state attorney general's office. Because if we can send all the letters in the world to the leaseholder there until their lease comes up in 2031. Good luck. They're not gonna move.
Yeah, there's no reason for that. I mean, you know, the people that own those oldest Kmart to ever
It's
worry about it at
$20.75
$55,000 a month, they're getting to keep it empty.
Yeah, and it's.
2075.
It's an embarrassment to us sitting here that it's allowed to continue on. I mean, it's number one thing, I mean, not number one, but go to Butler right now, I'm sure there's a complaint about it somewhere. That, it sits there empty, whether or not it becomes retail or tear it down and put housing in there. either one is gonna benefit the community.
So I guess I understand Karen's perspective on the big box store. I'm trying to look at it more sort of aesthetically, if nothing else. We have big, giant, empty buildings. So if we are not going to work to recruit someone to fill that giant, big, empty building, what are we going to do with it? And so I think if you were to ask the citizens, despite the fact that Target might jack up their prices or this might happen, my guess would be that they'd be like, bring it. Because we hate that big empty building.
Yeah, no, that is what people in town are like, yeah, the people in our town, like, they're very much, there's that whole libertarian streak of like, don't mess with my business, don't like, and we definitely value that. But when it comes to a corporation, in their mind, that's gone. And so, I mean, what I would love is us to have like a pilot program on our city property where we look at doing development into like tiny homes or something like that, to give housing to the community and get those wrinkles out and then demonstrate that, oh, we can do this sort of project. And then go after the owners of the old Kmart building and talk about getting in eminent domain to do housing for where we've have demonstrated that we can do this sort of a project.
And to be honest with you, I think I've kind of spoken to each of you, not anything serious, but there's a great potential with some city-owned property that, you know, if we can sit down and come up with the vision and what this place needs, what it's going to be. We listed on the Surplus Land Act, and the developers come to you, but you have to, before you list it, we have to have a very clear, defined vision of what this place would be.
Right. And,
you know, it's one of Dean's partners that he works with the firm. He's doing it all over the state right now.
And honestly, if we can, I kind of feel like if we could demonstrate that we can do that and do that with one property, then yes, I think the city should be aggressive at going after some of these properties that have stood vacant for a long time, and DWP properties.
Yeah. And I agree with everything that Stephen just said, that we need to demonstrate that we can do it as a city, that it with not, maybe something that's not quite so extravagant and large. It does not, however, solve the problem of the new old Kmart, right?
Yeah, and I think like a big box store is gonna come and say like, the new old Kmart, we wanna build our own building.
Right.
And then it's gonna be another empty building.
And-
Nobody's gonna repurpose that.
Yeah, one of the problems that you ran into, say, up at the Rite Aid parking, or the Rite Aid lot is the, the Big Five. They didn't need a building as big as Value Sports was for the old Kmart, the old Kmart. So, and so they subdivided that into several different things, and so any new place going into that would subdivide it further and further and further.
Yeah, so I do have conversations with retailers and developers who are interested in those properties. And so I don't know that I really want to address all the details of those conversations here. But that's certainly true, is that the new old Kmart, and to Councilmember Kong's point, one of the issues we have is that we have two of these, right? And so I do feel like retail has to be a part of that strategy, hopefully. But certainly one of the constraints is that the Kmart that's out of the Bonds complex it's 107,000 square feet, which is an enormous building. And so people like TJ Maxx and Kohl's and Target, they're looking for something that's more like 25,000 square feet, and on the outset, like 50,000 square feet. And so one of their concerns, in addition to the other constraints, is that it costs money, and I've been given numbers of about $2 million to demise that building into something that's smaller. And yes, it is also the preference of certain retailers that they would prefer to build a brand new building as well. The one thing that we would have in our benefit is that If a retailer wanted to come to Bishop, they just don't have a whole lot of options about where they're gonna build that building, so.
Well, I would support, looking at surplus lands in addition to looking at, working with the Attorney General's office. Like, I don't know if we need to see if we can do it and then go after. I would say, let's do it in tandem.
I just think it from a standpoint of bandwidth. And
Yeah.
bandwidth and being able to iron the kinks out, because if we're gonna go after go big and in that, and that's not the case where we want to be trying it out.
Well, I don't think we have to try it out. I mean, I think there's higher and better uses for that property, in addition to housing, Like it could be.
But I think taking that to the point of looking at the existing city properties.
Right.
Which we don't know, we have several of them inside in the city limits that could easily be surplus land. And start, what did a dent in the housing issue for workforce housing, if you could come up with 60 or 70 units somewhere that we've all talked about, and it's something I think that we can make happen, and relatively quickly if we come up with that vision.
And Destin and Stephen, to that point, I think maybe we're looking at two completely separate, they're intertwined, but where's the horse and what's the wagon? You build a housing and a company will say, wow, it's gonna cost us a lot of money to do it, but we have the population there now to support this build a big box, little box, whatever box you want, whatever. But I think maybe the housing component, if we could do that in 3 years, create 60 new housing units somehow, you could change the dynamic, and we could change the game to our favor a little bit.
Right. Yes, I agree.
So.
Well, and I would be in favor of doing it sooner rather than later, looking at getting the plan made and putting, deciding where on our city property we want this to go and just doing it.
I think we're at the spot we have to. We've talked, I've been in probably 5 of these planning things we've done here, and it's number one every time.
Yeah.
It's done.
Yeah.
No, I think that maybe a way to get there is create an ad hoc committee with 2 councils so that things can get rolling along and then brought to council on the intervals, and then because we can't do this every week. Nobody can expect to do that.
I think it's time, because for a long time it didn't affect us, but Rich, you can't get police officers coming because there's nowhere to live. We have a police chief who lives in another city. I think we're at that spot where it's gonna start affecting, our
I
city.
think most of our staff doesn't live in limits.
No. That's crazy, we have to.
We get to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
And maybe we even take that a step further, and with that ad hoc committee, then we bring in a kind of a housing committee, that there are several people that are very adamant, the citizens that would like to be involved, and we could get these things, we need to get something to the finish line so that we can put it on the surplus land act and get it going.
Right. And then, then I think, sure, I mean, I can see what you're saying here about doing it in tandem, because that other process started the last one.
For sure,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, I don't think it necessarily has to be housing, I think there's the other uses, for instance, increased mobility, like Yanni could go through that. Sure. There could be, there's multiple uses.
Yeah, just higher and better use.
Well, and that property on Main Street is large enough that you could have multiple uses.
Yeah, it could be great. But I do want to mention, we talked about big box retail, but I don't know where this fits in, but it has on this last bullet point, partner with the Eastern Sierra Business Resource Center. But I really would like to see the city help, or not maybe help, but advocate for independent businesses, because those are the businesses that are your neighbor, and they participate in Rotary, and they come to city council meetings, and their kids go to your schools, you know, these big box stores, they're not part of the community like independent businesses are. And so we want, you know, people opening independent breweries versus, you know, a chain brewery, or, you know, we want.
If we can help create that environment, I think great, because I agree with you 100%. That's where the community comes together.
Right, we want, you know, Looney Bean is advocating with AYSO, right? You know, you don't have Starbucks advocating for AYSO, you know?
Never.
So I just think whatever we can do to support, you know, and some communities go as far as not allowing chain stores in their community. I don't think that's where we want to go, but I know that
I'm okay
they.
with that.
But I do think we want to promote and support independent business owners, because they're the ones that give back.
Yeah, that's really what makes Bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah. The manor markets and the buy all the kids animals.
Oh, yeah.
They don't- Nobody else does
High
that.
country lumber, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, that is what makes Bishop, but then at the same time, we have this issue that if you look at the latest ones to be coming to town, it's like your Family Dollar, your Dollar General. And I guess one of the questions I have is, how much of a say do we as a council want to have in, like, you know, what in vetting?
What kind of business can come?
Right.
Yeah. It's a big question.
I would love to have a bigger say than we do. I don't necessarily, I mean, I think that obviously our locally owned businesses are super important. But I also think that something like a Family Dollar or a Dollar General is also important, especially to our lower income population. Do we need both of them? No.
But where is it our spot as a government to tell them? That's economically, if they suck really bad or people don't want them, it'll go broke and then it'll be in the store. Or if they do a great job, they'll be successful. But I look at, are we gonna tell businesses, no, we don't want you guys coming here and investing a bunch of money to make this building better, or to make.
Is it really investing, or is it like Mayor Schwartz was talking about, it extractive? It's the new mine, right?
And I think for me, I think it depends on what other things we have in place. So for example, if Dollar General tanks, are they gonna leave their signs there forever in a day?
Well, that's
And make it
a
right?
separate issue that we.
No, but I think the more we have control over the things on the front end and the back end, the less we have to concern ourselves with, oh, maybe this should come in or maybe that, we're gonna kind of narrow the field as it is with those two pieces.
Elaine, one question I have for you is, I mean, you've had a lot of people reach out to you, a lot of businesses reach out about some of the empty properties. Is it safe to say that the building owners are obstructive in fostering that sort of business-friendly environment?
I just missed the keyword with regards to the big empty cameras.
Yeah.
Obstructive might not be the right word, but I certainly wouldn't call them cooperative.
Okay. And so, like, because I know that there was some talk of, there was somebody who was an investor who was interested in purchasing the old Kmart or the new old Kmart. And just the property owners don't want to sell. They just want to rent.
Yeah, and so there are issues like that for sure.
And I mean, is there something that, and I think that's where it does fall on the council, on our role to balance like the needs of the community and like to be daddy, be like.
I could, and to a point, yeah, I could tell kids about here soon.
Well, it's time to get into the weeds at 7:26, but this conversation in terms of legal options, and before we start using too many legal buzzwords, is something that we can brief the council in closed session on and be a whole separate discussion in terms of what are those legal options. And so that may be on the future forecast.
And I feel like Stephen's dancing around it a little bit here, just because that's who he is, and this is not a legal thing, but we did talk when I first joined the council about empty building
Like
ordinance.
a property tax.
Right, and I think that that's something we should consider again, that if we're having uncooperative people who, or businesses that don't wanna sell their empty buildings. You know,
I'm not gonna argue.
We've had the carrot, the carrot has.
I think there's where, as a council, we can do stuff, but I think dictating the who's and knows, I understand strip clubs and certain things, yeah, we're gonna have to do our job, but.
Right, and I really agree with Dean's suggestion, because it is late, we do have a lot to get through. And when we get into the subject of how we're going to regulate, different businesses that are opening, and what the options actually are there in terms of zoning, it is it's a complicated subject, and I think there's good precedent for just not allowing for certain businesses, and we could get in further into the weeds about what that looks like when it comes across my desk, for instance, which is most often it doesn't. People come and do things and ask for permission later. Not most often, but often. But I would like to just finish, if there's no further discussion with regards to the empty buildings, I'd love to get through at least the next bullet.
Actually, I added which bullet point are we at, because the one I have is invest in the implementation of downtown specific plan actions. Is that where one of the action items would be to actually develop architecture guidelines or an architecture review board, or?
Yes, it is, and then that's also in the next section
it's in
as
the next
well, which
section.
elaborates on that.
All the code, that's.
Okay.
Thank you. So I did just want to call to the council's attention that there is an opportunity for the city of Bishop to participate in the development of a SEDS, which is an important document for tapping state and federal economic development funding. We cannot get funding through the Economic Development Administration without an adopted SEDS in place. And Inyo and Mono carry the distinction in California of being two of the only counties that don't have one. But there's efforts in place spearheaded by Inyo County to remedy that through grant funding. So we should absolutely participate in the development of that economic development document with our regional partners. There's a very good ROI there. And then I also wanted to bring to the council's attention that there's a very large economic development opportunity coming out of the state, which is called the Community Economic Resilience Fund. There's going to be $5 million in planning funds available for the Eastern Sierra for economic development. Eastern Sierra in this instance is defined by 7 counties, not 2. So that's Inyo, Mono, Alpine, and then 4 on the west side, like Tuolumne, Mariposa, Amador, and Calaveras, I think. And then following that planning, there's going to be state money distributed for economic development implementation. And so this has been considered to be a really awesome opportunity in the economic development community in California. And what's really great about it is it was ARPA funds, so it had to be spent 18 months. And everyone was like, this is really bad. This is a very bad idea. But then California did some sort of accounting trick, and now it's not ARPA funding. So we'll actually have time to make that strategic and impactful.
Are those two connected in some fashion? Do we have to do the one before we do the other?
They're not technically.
Okay.
The way that the state was implementing this SURF thing was they were hoping that you would take something out of your SEDS and do it, but we didn't have a SEDS. And so we're trying to get ahead of that, but like I said, they've expanded the timeline, so now we're not so under the gun to make something intelligent happen there. Obviously, working with LADWP for property divestitures is important for both economic development and housing. I would just point out to the council that the bulk of the general plan hasn't been updated since 1992. There are parts of it that are probably, there's probably legislation that's been passed in that period that we need to do a general plan update to address. And I think that it's been identified elsewhere that this is true for our municipal code as well, that there's just places that it needs to be comprehensively updated. And then finally, there is the desire to establish specific goals and metrics in our relationship with the Chamber of Commerce.
Besides the contract that we just approved recently?
This is actually not my bullet point, so I would defer your
No.
question to Destin,
Okay.
Councilman Garcia.
Okay, thank you.
No, and this is kind of a longer topic, but I hate that. So, I'm just trying to figure out how to get around this weird dance that we do every year with the council and the chamber of how much to fund, how much do we give, what do they do for us? How do we
Percentage of the TOT done.
So, yeah, you were looking at my notes.
Oh, okay.
I'm teasing. But it's a thought is, because I had a long discussion with Tanya before last, and about 2 hours, and we talked about it, and she says, well, a lot of things you're asking for, not necessarily, I can't, I don't know how to quantify it or how to do this, but the TOT tells the story. If we're doing a good job, the TOT is higher. If we're not, it's not there. And so I feel like if we could come up with a percentage that we're all comfortable with of the TOT, and it just said, she's doing really good, that percentage equates to a bigger number. If she's not, they're not getting their job done, then they get a lower number, and we quit having this, because it's weird, it's been my whole career, and even with the BTID is coming out, we still do it. And so I'm trying to just figure out a way, I think we're going to always fund them in some capacity. So how do we do that without having to go through a long, the kind of could be a bloody battle at times, with what different people feel about the chamber, one side or the other. And not just us, but the community itself.
How does she feel about a percentage?
No, she's been advocating for that for a while.
So how does she feel about it? Yeah, I wanted to run this by you guys. I did, it came to my mind in the middle of the night after talking with her. It made some sense. She's right. If the TOT is high, then they're bringing people to our town.
I think on the list here, that's pretty real simple.
Yeah.
Figure it out, do the math and bring it back to us.
Yeah, I just run some numbers in here, and
And bring us what the examples look like, but I agree with you. I've been on council long enough to see, it's kind of a battle sometimes, and it depends on who's on the council doing what. I think this simplifies it, it's a carrot on a stick.
Yeah.
You're in charge of your own destiny.
Yeah, because with the numbers have changed, they go between, on a bad year it was $300,000. And I don't want to base it off TOT, I was thinking the BTID. That number, that's what they're living off of, and on a really good year, it was nearly $500,000. And really bad year, it was $200,000. So, I don't know, so we can move on, I'll come up with some numbers.
And is this funding to the Chamber of Commerce or the Visitor Bureau?
That is a good question. I mean, the way that I've seen it is it's always been like, as long as they're doing the PR and the advertisement for Bishop to get heads in beds, then that's what we're supporting. So that would be the visitors bureau, not the chamber.
Yes, because that was a huge discussion when
I
we
know.
went to the contract a few months ago. Okay, and apparently the Chamber of Commerce is self-funded. They don't need any money, but
Right,
the Visitor Bureau does.
right.
So that was a distinction that we made.
But she
in the
blends
contract.
the two.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, she
Skip.
runs the two, yes. And the Visitor Bureau does some of the activities to the Chamber of Commerce, but that's where the funding gets mixed.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay,
Okay.
you can sort that out.
Yeah,
I'll we'll flush those out.
yeah,
I just would like to get it somewhere. I'll try to have a good answer for you all at a council meeting, whatever it is, before we do our budgets.
Great.
So the next one, Elaine gets to run again.
So this is, I think what Councilman Mahovey was looking for, and all of these actions are pulled directly from the specific plan. These are the recommended actions that the council had there. So that includes, codifying the mixed use zoning, establishing design review committee, expanding trees, includes the wayfinding program we discussed earlier. I'm just skipping to the next full bullet point. looking for opportunities to increase green spaces in downtown and creating places that, people can, sit and people watch and making downtown a destination. Primary on that list is completing the Whitney Alley project, which has for the time being has a grant funded source to get that project accomplished.
But again, not enough money to get the project. So I think part of the landing on here is, we need to think about, is that a priority to get that project completed? We want to add money to that out of our general fund, or, so to complete the project.
What are the parameters? What is the full extent of completing the project, and what is the amount of funding that would have to come out of the general budget to do?
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually got money allocated to move over to design. And from the design, we'll be able to come up with an estimate, and then we'll have a better feeling of what that number is. And I'm going to add one other piece that's, I think, is an important one, with working with Adam, the old Momart parking lot. So, well, I've been now dating myself. Holy smokes, the dirt lot next to the fenced dirt lot. So they're very interested in partnering on that as a parking lot / pocket park in the front of it. So.
Can we just turn that into the entrance into the park?
Well, that, eventually, they're not prepared at this time to sell it for whatever reason. But I think where Adam's going with this is, if we develop it together, it's kind of, they want to spend the most of the upfront money, and then they want us to maintain it. And then we'll have a little bit of first right of refusal when that is ready to go.
Okay.
So, but it's also a good project, I think. It's eyesore.
Oh, yeah.
It's an eyesore. We could get some downtown, some trees, some grass, some picnic tables.
No, in an ideal world, that would be the entrance to the park.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't have to do the dog.
We don't have to do all this stuff
But sure.
instead of the driveway to shots.
The clock tower, what about?
What?
I'm getting tired, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes. One question I have is part of the community beautification and sustainability, identifying the turnoffs from Caltrans that we could cut off and turn into pocket parks.
Yes.
Because I think we've discussed at least two places that maybe that would be good at. One is Lagoon, I believe, like by the bakery, and the other one is by the church on Main Street. Elm. Yeah.
And that one is just more even flushed out in Caltrans. This one will be better. So.
Okay.
That,
But that's included in these.
That's
priorities.
included in yours, yes, and so,
Okay.
yes, absolutely.
And I think that we need to make sure that when if I go back in time to earlier tonight, when we talked about bike routes and walking routes and sidewalks, that we think about those things.
And that's
Same
why
time.
I thought
Yes.
Lagoon would be a good place, because that's
Absolutely.
an avenue from east side
Yeah,
of town. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be preferred safe route to school, I think, for that part of town.
Okay.
But Rich can talk again just quickly, and then his administer a robust graffiti removal plan that includes education, prevention, and enforcement.
Yeah. Park staff's been doing a robust job at it anyway. but
Yeah.
We've been
We
handling
kind
it.
of, Dan and I have been kind of talking about some of the things we need to do. Obviously, we need to do a little more prevention through the schools, I think, start identifying some of these youngsters and see if we can change behavior. But to be honest with you, a lot of the graffiti we're looking at, I don't think is youngsters. I think it's, I would go 18 plus. So that's where the enforcement aspect of it will come in. So we have some plans to look down the future of some things in the park. But one of the things Dan and I talked about is potentially identifying a graffiti location where these kids can actually go out there and put their art up.
as part of the young culture, the skate culture, some different things, as long as it's tasteful and done meaningful and you know, leave it up for a while and then you actually take it down and then they can start over. So it's just a thought. Some cities do that and it's very successful and
I like it.
yeah, so it's a long range goal, obviously, but it's something that, you know, we hope in the future near future to be able to bring back and kind of talk about further. But because I've been in contact with the mural foundation in town. We've been talking about the murals they're gonna do and different things and we were talking about they're redoing the ones over behind the old barbecue bills down in that alleyway and then maybe redoing the one on the side of the PD at some point and then maybe potentially talk with them because they're wanting to expand downtown and do some of the walls downtown. Maybe as we get closer to the park, we identify a spot for the kids and young artists, kind of like what we talked about. We talked about the graffiti ordinance before. And then potentially maybe when we have a little more formulated plan, we come back with a graffiti ordinance that includes some
The
of those
entire
things also.
Carl's Jr. wall would be epic.
Oh, behind on the backside.
Yeah.
So it's already there.
Not on Main Street, but you know, into the park and side,
Yeah,
stuff like
yeah.
that. But yeah, just some potential thoughts.
The
I mean, that's a conversation with the adjacent property owner as well, you know, if you wanna invite that and then make them angry, but that's one of the best opportunities, places to do something like that.
Yeah.
That idea.
It's kind of where we're at there.
My only concern is,
There will be guidelines with it,
that's,
The policing of it,
So,
yeah.
right.
making sure that,
no vulgarities, you know, it would be basically like a public art wall. No gang related, anything like that.
Well, I think once you get it and the people that use it in the right way, they'll protect it to keep it that way too.
You see that in a lot of the bigger cities, and we talked about it in the skate parks, like they'll actually, you know, paint and take care of their own, and I mean, it's ownership on them, so.
Basically, our skate park is almost entirely painted now because of the amount of graffiti that was in there, so there you go.
So we can get it constructive, or it can be destructive, hopefully we can get it constructive.
Yes. Reach out to Adam on that one, collaborate. They're incredible good builders.
Oh, yeah.
we kind of jumped out of,
next.
away from you, Elaine, do you have?
No, I think we kind of moved past, she got her part, and actually the rest of it is really stuff that falls in other categories already that we talked bypass and working with Caltrans, so now we get to go to the big organizational excellence.
Okay,
So first off, is, I know we talked about for a couple of years, establishing a minimum general fund reserve balance. I think that's critical, and it will not get us into the situation we were with COVID and worrying to death. You know, it's that, I don't know why I've been doing some homework looking at other areas, mostly in California. 25% is a pretty common number there. It feels low to me because it's like the old 6 month savings in, but that's 25% would be roughly about a $2.5 million. So where we're at today or close.
So. Yeah, I mean, 25% seems small, and when you think of like, oh, that just means we would be able to operate for 3 months if something went away. But I think what we should keep in mind is that the 25% should be of what it would be required to maintain operations. Because I think the current budget that we're talking about now, we have like a couple of $1 million that are like grants for this thing.
Yes.
And for one-off projects, and so I think we should be looking when we're looking at that number, we should be able to see what the required minimum the functional operations requirements are. And then 25% of the budget might be more like 6 months. So
yeah,
that number might work. So I
No,
think we
I
want
follow you,
relative to
exactly.
the.
and
Like, I
also,
do-
when you
yeah,
say
it's-
10 million, that's also water and sewer and all that stuff that's in there that's not gonna be in that same position.
Exactly. So I would I mean, I'd advocate, like, my gut feeling is with you in the sense that like, oh, we should be able to operate for at least 6 months, but we should define what that's operation budget is.
Yeah, exactly. What level of service, if it's that dire of a crisis, what level of services does that $2 million get you? That might last 7 or 8 months.
Exactly.
Right.
I follow you. So, okay,
How will you word that though? Like when we're all gone
yeah.
and it's a new council and a new city administrator, like how are they gonna, like, how is this gonna, is that gonna be subjective then? Like, what is that? Like, you know, like 25% of the general fund is like a clear number, right? 25,
Correct.
like what your operational, you know, that's very vague.
We'll set a funding policy and reserve policy, and we have an example from the town of Grand Lakes, which I shared with you, Dustin.
Yes.
And we can set that, you know,
Yeah, it has
before
those
you,
parameters.
and you guys can review it and see what you would like to add to it.
Yeah, I just would like to see it be something that other people could implement, you know?
I
Yes.
agree,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
That, not like our cost sharing plan that
Well, I think
nobody seems to know how it gets figured out.
I think if Mammoth has a program, and to Steve's point, to your concern, Karen. If it's done with what are the bare minimum operating things, it's not the whatever other little projects and community service stuff, but to keep the park open, to keep the police department employed, to keep fire department, what are the bare minimum, 25% of that?
Yeah.
And it's a pretty fluid number as far as that. If the city's doing, as the budget goes up, this number moves too. So I think it can be done.
Yeah.
But I like the concept of,
Yeah, the
Maintaining services.
because in the past, we've gone, oh, let's have 3 million, let's have 5, there's a number, but never a true number.
no, yeah, it has to be a percentage based off of X, Y, and Z that anyone can read and be able to figure that out. Got it. All right, so the next one is the one we all love to talk about is a plan to manage unfunded liabilities.
10,000.
So I, our favorite one, right? That's what did Jim say?
He said $10,000.
$10,000. So yeah, I know we talked about it a few times in the last year, but I've done, kind of reached out to the auditor at County, talked to them, try to figure out what other people are doing. And an unfunded liability and pension is a moving target that you will never, ever be able to manage. If we were to go and borrow $10 million tomorrow to pay off our unfunded liabilities, in July, we might have 3 million again. It's just changing with the stock market changing. So rather than just throwing money to PERS and saying, here, we're going to try to pay this thing off. We already have the OPEB, why am I drawing a blank at the moment? Our retirement money that's in there. And essentially what it's through PARS, who we have other retirement stuff through. And it's essentially a savings account that we know we need $6 million to fund our liabilities in healthcare for retiree health and all that. Well, we've been contributing to it and we have about $3 million in there right now. That's surely not, it's still our money. It's in there making 6% a year through their account. If we had a crisis, we can draw from that to pay our health insurance every month. So this PARS offers the same exact plan to do it for our pension liability as well. So we need to, I feel, my recommendation is that we need to come up with that amount of money that we want to put in our budget every year. And we create that new account with PARS to cover that unfunded liability and pension as well as continue to pay all the payments that were required by PERS and PARS.
Sure. I think that makes sense.
Seems rational.
Yep.
Yes.
Like it.
Yeah, Jenny's on board. I cleared it by the money, the person that carried the money. So, and then hitting through, I guess we need to just go through is, coming up with some policies and stuff for, some comprehensive city council training, especially for new council members at the beginning that, help them understand their roles and responsibilities, and most of you, we figured out, but it's a normal standard in most cities and counties to do this type of training at the beginning. We want to talk about aggressive recruitment and retention program for qualified employees. You know, these are all just, again, these are goals, they're not gonna cost us money, but how are we gonna implement these things?
And
Or we
maybe
need
like-
to implement and then become a part of our plan.
And in that, maybe like succession planning is part of that.
Yeah, I think.
Those are down there?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly, so, you know, getting to the point where we're doing personnel manuals and updating them on a regular basis, MOUs. Not letting those things just slide for 30-something years where we're at today. Complete workload analysis to review resource allocation that adequately supports the level of service of the city and the needs of the residents. You know, are we taking on more than we can do with the staff? How do we manage that? Develop salary studies for all full-time, part-time employees on a regular basis, you know, not every year, but keep up and make sure we're just not falling far behind or getting ahead of the game. Work with other organizations to identify opportunities to share employees. That's a biggie that I've been talking with Dan, is how do we share part-time employees with the county so we can cover the shortages that we're having in our part-time staff.
Or with the PD.
Or the PD, or, you
Crossing
know,
guards,
crossing guards,
things like that.
Everyone that's part-time.
How do we share, you know, there's
Why
a
do we
lot.
do the crossing guards? Why isn't the school board do that?
Let's talk in those, in fact, we're having a coffee Friday morning, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, you'll love it.
Okay.
You know, we've always, they're kind of around, they get a good organization or org chart for the city. There's not really a true org chart that anybody has. Coordinate opportunities to build trust and professionalism, training between management and employees association, which will pay dividends when we negotiate and stuff. Get everybody, let the staff, all the employees understand our budget, know what we have, not we have secrets, and then that creates that animosity when we get into negotiations. Strive to do that, leadership training, foster relationships, create city team building events. You know, those are always hard ones to do, but I think it's important that we need to have this in our sustainability plan. And nurture collaboration and communication between departments to continue to contribute to the success and goals of other departments for the benefit of the overall mission of the city. That is a huge one right there.
What is the mission of the city of Bishop?
Well, that's, I hope that we're getting this out of this tonight. We're gonna be able to, you know, and do we even have a true mission
I
statement?
couldn't find it in the website.
I don't think that we do. We
I
need to
looked.
create one.
Parks and Recs have one.
PD has one.
PD has one.
Public Works has one.
Where's finances?
Yours should be the easiest, probably, in reality.
Make the one.
Yes, make money, keep money.
Responsible with the money, yes.
Just added that on your mission statement for the city of Bishop. Every department has one. We do.
Go find it.
And again, like I said, you know, as all my years at the city, it's always been budget time is this, everybody fends for themselves. The little bit of dollars is like, I'm gonna do whatever I can with whatever I can get, and it's never enough to really do anything big. These department heads all sat down and said, you know, I'm willing to sacrifice this and this because the biggest goal in the city that we need to accomplish this year is in the fire department, and we're gonna all give a little to make sure that goal happens for the city. And that's never been that way, because there's never really enough money, to be honest with you. It was kind of, you know, we have these new tax measures and stuff, so we actually have an opportunity to start achieving big things in the city if we work together at each department, as one city, not each department.
Yeah, balancing the budget shouldn't be about having enough money to fund each department individually to cover their needs or wants. Balancing the budget should be about funding properly all departments.
Yes.
Where they have what they need to provide the services that the community needs in a equitable way, not funding
Yes.
more or less based on historic trends.
Yeah.
But in today's needs and tomorrow.
Yeah, and then establishing those goals of what we and actually realizing that the long-term 3 and 4 year goals that we need to realize them and make them happen and not talk about those things and not.
He's just waiting his turn because
I
he's
know.
gonna need a lot of
I'm
money
trying
in
to
the
get
next
to-
3 years.
I'm trying to get to
You
9
see him
o'clock.
falling
So
asleep. Yeah. You need some more coffee to stay awake?
And,
I know.
and so that kind of comes up to the, we is establishing, I don't know if percentage is the right word, how to put it, but how are we going to spend our Measure P money and allocating it accordingly instead of just kind of saying it's there so that we can provide for the citizens what we said that we could do for them. And granted, that number is doing well, but we do have to remember that some of that money was spent to fill positions that we could not fund before, that we cut during COVID and things like that. So, again, that if it's 1.6 million, we've spent 200,000 on employees or whatever. So I just want to, when we do our budgets, we should all know that what we're doing with that tax money.
And let's also be clear, when we passed, when we got Measure P passed, I believe that year, our budget was an $800,000 deficit.
Correct.
So we recovered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we recovered, but yeah, now it's time to
And we build back up our reserve. So.
Right.
And the year didn't turn out like we thought it was going
Right. It wasn't,
Thankfully.
And I think we need to decide we've already decided that the park needs, and there's going to be a full-time person that works in that park. But we keep talking about continually over the last several years is a full-time planning position. And, do we want to add that to this year's budget? We have a job description, we have a lot of things, but are we going to add that? Or, I'm asking council, is that something that we want to add to our next year's budget?
I think so.
I think so.
Sorry to, and then also looking at park staff as a whole, as we endeavor into more and more programs and more events, is how do we delegate those? So what I'm actually looking at, pulling numbers with Jenny, is the amount of money that we generate in our youths and in our adult programs and how much money that we give actually back to the general fund. That money needs to be spent within those programs.
Yeah.
So it legitimizes actually hiring a full-time employee, but we're looking at benefit and position overall. So it's part of that is in the works as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Any money that those programs generate should be used to enhance the programs.
I mean, when it comes to planning in particular, you just mentioned our general plan was up to 92. I'd imagine at the time that was a pretty big endeavor. We weren't there for that. Maybe Jim. And so obviously, that's something that needs some attention to, and I still go back to when we look at ROI, return on our investment. The PD doesn't give us any ROI, nor should they.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Same with fire department, same with community services, but I do think planning is the one department that we can invest in and get a return on.
And I think we have to, we're looking at goals of moving our city forward, and we have to do, all this has to get done somehow. It's not gonna
Does it
be.
have to be a planner, or is it more like economic development, is it,
I
like,
think
is it
up
like-
to the department.
is it like someone who has a degree in planning, or is it someone who, what kind of person are we looking for?
I
Or
agree with
is
you.
it something that we're thinking we could partner with the county and cost share like we do with the building inspectors and have, a little more collaboration? I just don't know, you get a planner and, they
might be, very educated and something that's very different than what we need, so
Yeah,
I guess
I think we should have a closed session with our current economic and planning development coordinator to talk about that situation. What can we do based on the department staffing today and what we need, what we want the department to do in the future.
And could that be filled, with maybe hiring a consultant for 3 years? I don't know, I just think that there's a lot of questions on what our goals are and how we could fulfill those goals.
I think the one question we don't have is that we're definitely willing to invest in that realm. And with the
Right.
details of that, I think are up to.
Correct.
Yeah.
To you guys.
Exactly, how do you mix economic development and planning and all that and.
Yeah, I'm just not necessarily convinced that like a
So,
person
sure.
is like, what is this answer?
But maybe a person is, and you bring up points, Karen, do we want a person has 14 different hats on? Or where's our focus? And that's what we're gonna basically weed out tonight, or get at least a little more weeded out. Where's our focus? If it's housing, then probably the planner is pretty good at, is what we need to focus on. There's where the consultant parts maybe can come in on the backside. And we need a consultant to look at the economic component of this part. But where's our number? Where would be the majority of the person we needed? Maybe that's the person that we're trying to find. That's their job title.
Well,
I would like to hear what Elaine has to say about it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Councilman Garcia. I think that it's very important for the council to identify what their priorities are, because currently you have one planning staff who does try and coordinate housing and economic development and urban design and mobility and general plan implementation. And a few other things as well. And there's core responsibilities to that position that are going to have to be filled. There's current planning applications that come through, conditional use permits, lot line adjustments, the like. Those are not technically difficult applications necessarily, though I would say that having a broad general education in planning, which includes things like urban design and environmental law and land use law, all is very useful for being able to process those current planning applications which come in on a regular basis. And in particular, I think if the council adopts the mixed use overlay and the specific plan and wants to do redevelopment of city properties for housing, all of those are planning activities. And the complexity of them will increase. So, and I think there's certainly consulting firms available where that kind of thing can be outsourced. But I think that it's my experience working in the city of Bishop that our community is unique, and having someone there that you can talk to who knows the community is pretty essential for the success of those applications. And also, understanding the constraints. I could see very easily outsourcing some of those applications to someone from outside the area, and they wouldn't understand necessarily, for instance, the goals of the city council to be flexible in interpreting the code to get certain things accomplished. For one instance. There obviously is also specialties like things like housing or economic development. And then there's also long-range planning activities. So I think it would be valuable to maybe have a conversation with Destin about all of the responsibilities that are currently housed within the planning department, and maybe what the particular skill sets are to support those. And then it would be the priorities of the council to figure out what the appropriate person is to fill that.
How long, so today is a department of one, a part-time one, half.
Yeah.
How long has it been down there?
Well, always. I've been with the city of Bishop for 5 years, and prior to that, they had a part-time planner.
In the 5 years that you've been there, in your experience and personal opinion today, how many people should be working in that department?
I am not a part-time employee currently.
And
So I think
Thank you.
from the perspective of me as a council member, we definitely need more bodies in there. I don't care what you call them. I don't know enough about the educational background of a planner versus a economic, I don't know enough about that to know. But I think that, yeah, let's throw down all the stuff that is currently getting done in there and parcel it out and figure out what we want to call this person and what educational background this person needs to have.
Yeah, this plan just added a lot more to it.
Absolutely.
To accomplish our goals, let's figure out what we need.
And I think the only point I'm making is like, I don't think we need to be involved in the personnel
No,
issue.
no,
Like
no,
who,
not at all.
what title is.
No,
hired.
no,
I think,
We figured
I
that
think you
out.
can figure that
Yeah.
out. I think you do have a sense from everything that we've discussed of like,
Oh,
what
yeah.
are some of the priorities that we're gonna be looking at. You guys can-
Absolutely.
That's where we wanna
That's
go.
why we hire Howard.
Public's good.
I would agree. And then I will add, I would just like to quickly add to Dan, we already plan on July hiring somebody to go to work full time in the park. I feel like we have funds. I would ask that we could start flying that job now. And we might get them hired in June, but right now, we're asking Dan to be the manager of the park, the community service department. And he's over there 4 days out of 5, either mechanicking or fixing a water leak, and he needs a body over.
Today was no exception.
Absolutely. I agree completely. Absolutely.
It just might be one extra month that we're paying that salary that we had planned, but I think we need it badly.
Dan, if you were to get run
Thank you.
over by your lawnmower tomorrow, who would do your job?
Goodness.
Good luck.
There's a
That's the
hole.
same for Joe. I mean, Joe's in the same boat. I
No,
mean,
there's a hole there. I think it's pretty obvious.
Joe would not get run over by your lawnmower.
he'd get run over by a police car. I mean.
Have you seen why people hide?
The
new officer Shell's got to give me.
That was a very nice segue into the next section.
Exactly. As we go into public safety.
Can I just ask, I'm sorry, I know we want to segue, but this says develop volunteer program?
Yeah, what's that about?
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Because what I have on here is like, does this?
I think
volunteer
this is-
coordinator, are there legal issues
I
with
wrote,
this?
for what?
Rich, this was something that.
No, we
wanted to add.
kind of talked about it, Dan and I both kind of talked about it. Volunteer program, like if we can get volunteers to come help us do crossing guard, which obviously we need, I think council, maybe we need a closed session about that and talk about the future of that program, but of course, that's a conversation for Destin and I then to bring to you, but volunteer program, a lot of police departments are able to have a real successful volunteer program to supplement some of those things that we don't have to have full-time employees to do. Like that, making runs to the jail, to the DA's office for us, transporting paperwork, helping do fingerprints, helping us do inventories, audits, I mean, any number of things, helping us, work intersections during parades, all type of different things. So in the next year and a half, COVID has really stalled that project for us. But I think over the next year and a half, we really are going to put an aggressive push on that to see. I think for the Bishop PD, if we get 2, 3, or 4 regular folks that come in and want to help us out filing, doing records, they can even do some basic data entry, things that aren't law enforcement related. I mean, it would be invaluable. And, and it costs us a little bit of training. They become part of the team, costs us the minimal uniform cost, but you know what, the worth we will get back out of them working with us as partners is just tremendous. Because I see others utilizing them, chamber and different things. Well, why can't we do the same type of program? So
It creates pride in your community as well.
Could they be high school students?
yeah.
For some of
Absolutely.
those functions, maybe for others, they have to be over 18.
Yes, they have to be over 18.
And the good news is we already have that mechanism in place. We have all the volunteer paperwork, everything to go with it. So it's
I think once you
just
open
implementing
implementing
it and putting it in
and
place.
Rich, that it'll kind of self-populate itself. Get 4 people in there saying, wow, this is cool, I could do this. They tell someone, it kind of keeps evolving.
Right.
Keep evolving. Right. So go be a volunteer at the park for something. And I agree, it's still some community spirit. Hey, I want to go help the parade. Instead of just watch.
And my only concern would be a confidentiality issue. What are you having to file? What are you?
No,
Yeah,
just
that-
things that they, routine correspondence, records releases.
Just wanted to say that?
Yeah, no, there's a whole aspect. I've been in charge of a volunteer program prior to getting here, so that's the easy part. Because it's like everything else, you're gonna get 10 people put in for it, you're gonna get 3 that spend a ton of time with you. And those are the ones that, they learn the ins and outs, what they can and can't do. And we have them sign confidentiality disclosure, just like the law enforcement folks do. They have to take the CLETS testing for their basic, information that they have to understand they can't release, those types of things. So we have the fail safes in place for us. So I'll go ahead and jump that. That's gonna take another part off of my stuff down here at the bottom. But one of the things we talked about in this is to continue to address crime trends through strategic operations and maintain low crime rates by proactive law enforcement and innovative community policing practices. So what we're gonna do is we need to stay on top of that. We're working with the DA's office right now to implement some technology programs for us in Yeo County within the city, for cell phone information, crime mapping, data, things like that. You saw we instituted the RIMS system. We really want to start looking to the next generation of technology to track our crime trends. As a matter of fact, the lieutenant, support services manager, myself, and the sergeants all now have the ability to look at our calls for service on our phones. So we know what's going on at any given time now. We have the tablets, things like that in place. The computers are going to be coming in cars soon. The reason those aren't out now is we're ensuring that we are in compliance with the Department of Justice requirements. And that's taken a little bit longer than we thought to get the infrastructure in place. And the reason we're doing that is because once that's done, we're ready for whatever comes during the next generation of technology upgrades. So, as you saw when we made the arrest for the catalytic converter thefts, that was a joint effort with every agency, within the county, within the Eastern Sierra. And so that's how we want to keep collaborating. And we need to continue working on our interoperability for radio systems and things like that with the other local agencies and staying in touch with one another. So Joe will talk probably more about this when he's been up on the plans, but one of the things I mentioned, talking with Joe, maybe as we move forward and look at needing a new, police and fire station, doing a joint public safety building, because obviously fire will need quite a bit more room than we do. I'm moving forward with our department later this year. We do not need an intoxication cell. We're going to probably eventually be down to one holding cell for temporary holding. We transfer everything to Inyo County because frankly, the criminals aren't staying in jail anyway. And I can't take an officer or a reserve officer off the streets for 6 or 8 hours to babysit intoxicated people. So they're just going to go to the county jail. That's a conversation I've already had with Sheriff Pritchard. We've talked about moving in that direction, and this was actually even before he took office because he's been in charge of the custodial facility. He is in support of my plan. So that's kind of something we're moving forward to. The capital and equipment replacement for police, we already have it with the cars, but the lieutenant and support services manager, Rich Watt, and I, we're going to start looking to the future. We have some cops money. We're going to upgrade our handguns this year. We're going to upgrade the lighting systems on our patrol rifles, which is a major safety issue for us that we need them because that can be the difference between a shoot, don't shoot type incident. So we're going to implement that. We have the money, we're going to spend it, we're going to get it done. And that's stuff that's going to put us, 7, 8 years down the road that we won't have to refund these things. So now we can start actually putting money aside, yearly or every other year. So when these things come due, I don't have to come and ask for $50,000. I've already got $50,000. So we're going to start doing that also for our handheld radios, dispatch equipment. We're going to develop a plan. It won't be overnight, but it's going to be progressive until we can eventually have all of this stuff to where, we know what's coming up. Like, council was gracious enough to let us put in, paint and flooring, and we're going to utilize the COPS grant money to purchase furniture for the building because we can utilize that money for that. We're going to put all new furniture. So we're talking, 7, 8, 10 years there that we're going to cover that won't have to be replaced. And looking at new lockers in the locker room, things like that, because we have the money. So we're going to go ahead and move move forward and get those things done. And then once those things are done, then we can start talking about, okay, how much are we gonna set aside each year for, building maintenance, building projects? Not just your standard leaky faucet or something like that, broken water pipe, but we're talking about, replacing lighting, to be more efficient, LED, what are we gonna do, landscaping outside, just different things that we want to do to preserve that building as we move forward.
Time for you to cut in here, Joe. Don't you?
Law enforcement grants, I've been working with Ilya. We've kind of seen what's happened in the last couple of years, law enforcement's taken a hit, some of it warranted, some of it not. But be that as it may, grants right now are really tight, but Ilya is really on board. I hit him up weekly. And he's probably tired of hearing from me. So, but as soon as we get grant opportunities out there, we're gonna really move forward on them, like we talked about with electric vehicles and different things. That's the one that is really on my radar for him. Because I would like to put command staff and, the plainclothes units in electric vehicles if all possible before we do patrol. At least get our, ones that don't get driven as much as the electric vehicles to have some emission savings there. New technology, talking about doing getting us to be paperless. Talk about getting scanning programs in place, so we start eliminating paper, upgrading our servers and things like that. We're already looking at doing some of that in the future to hold more data storage, so we do not have to have so much paper in the building, which in and of itself, if we start saving paper costs, that's significant because we burn through a ton of paper. And it's things like that we're looking at doing. We talked a little bit about traffic enforcement earlier. Over the next 2 to 3 years, the goal is to have all patrol officers trained in the use of our LiDAR system, so we can start doing more speed enforcement. Right now, we have one LiDAR, one radar. Now that we're getting out of COVID, the training programs will start picking up statewide, so we can get people to them. So far, there's just huge waiting lists for the bigger agencies that as soon as the course opens up, they've got 50 people signed up for them. So we're kind of working on getting that done. One of the things I've talked about also with folks at the county, and I've brought it up a little bit with some of our counterparts up in Mono County, is talking about getting regionalized instructors on the Eastern Sierra for certain courses, so we do not have to keep spending a ton of money sending people out of town for training all the time and start saving some money. I'm a firm believer that every officer who goes to training should go out of the area once every 2 years. That's to get them out experience, get some collaboration with other agencies, but not every time we have to send somebody to training. We're having to rent cars, we're having to pay, high cost amounts for per diem and travel time to and from. And now we're talking about gas at $6-7 a gallon. It's gonna be an impact on us just driving on patrol and going to the jail, much less having to send people out of the Eastern Sierra all the time.
So are you thinking about having our Bishop PD officers provide training for the tribal officers, or?
I have to, we can't really until, that's something that I need to coordinate with Sheriff Richard.
Okay.
But I've met with Chief Julian, and we've talked about doing some cross training and things like that. There's some nuances with doing training for them. I can explain it to you a little bit later.
Okay, thank you.
So the firearms I talked about, paperless infrastructure, coordinating with the tribe, that's ongoing cross training. He's even talked about letting us become federally certified just like they are, so we can assist. There will be no jurisdictional issues at that point, which we will move towards. I don't know exactly how soon, but that's kind of on him to help us coordinate that. So I know it's in the works once he gets some of the other things up and running, but we need some MOUs in place and things like that.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
What makes a firearm outdated?
Its use and technology.
Okay. 100-year-old firearms still.
Yeah, they work, just not real efficient. When you're aiming here and they hit over there. But what we're looking at moving to is 9mm and easier to carry, less straight penetration, and also ammo will be cheaper and longer, easier to get. So it's a cost savings too. Because some of our handguns are 15, 18 years old.
We have sewer pipes that are 100 years. Come on. And that gets used much less.
So one thing we talked about earlier is succession planning. And so as you can see, I've promoted since I've been here 2 outstanding individuals to sergeant. We've made a couple of excellent hires. We have a young man who we're getting ready to start a background on in the next week or so. And I'm really excited about that. And then we have one more position to fill and we should be good to go. Cody's doing pretty good in the academy, no problems there. And so when we talk about succession planning, I want to implement, get these folks to leadership development training. I'm totally appreciative that you hired me from the outside, but 2 chiefs in a row from the outside, I don't want there to be a third. I think it's time to go inside when I'm ready to retire. And I think the people are in place, and if I train them right, they'll be fine. So that's on me. That's what you hired me to do, and that's what's going to get done. So the way I'm running the agency, there are no secrets unless it's a personnel issue. Other than that, my door's open, or I tell them everything that's going on, because I could drop off tomorrow and it's got to be next person up. So let me close real quick with one aspect I overlooked. I've been talking with Marilyn Mann. Her and I have a pretty shared vision, and her staff in implementing a good crisis intervention program here in the Eastern Sierra. She has some grant funding. We just need to get the instructor over here to get it done. And this is one of the programs we're talking about, getting our own instructor here. I don't really have a timeline yet. There's some things on that beyond our control, but that's what we're working towards getting done here. So all the officers will be trained in that.
And by crisis intervention, you're talking about DV or SA or?
Dealing with mental health issues.
Mental health. Okay.
Yeah, dealing with our mental health and
Sexual assault?
our that type of crisis. Oh, and I don't know if you folks are aware, but we are, I have purchased the autism patches for the department. They will be on the uniforms in April, and we will be selling them to the public, and whatever profits are donated will be given to a local charity. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you. So double.
Can I ask about the walking, the officers walking? Are you looking towards having that happen at some point soon,
As
or?
soon as we get the staffing up and running. They do what's called a walk and talk now. One of the things they've done notoriously, and I'm trying to hammer this point home, is they're out there doing it.
Mhm.
They just don't document.
Mm.
And so I'm trying to get everybody to remember, I know you folks are out there working, but get credit for what you're out there doing. If you're going into businesses and you're going and checking doors and, you're telling people to close their, car door they left open in front of their house, and everybody calling into dispatch, so we document that activity that you're out there doing.
Yes.
And so that's a work in progress.
Great.
It'll be a lot nicer to see pictures on Facebook of officers doing that instead of the restaurant bringing you guys food.
I've been taking those pictures. I know.
I know you haven't seen any of those. I know.
Yeah, no, I understand exactly what you said. No, I get it. I get it.
Is it
You're
a
right.
restaurant or the bakery bringing donuts?
We don't take donuts there, only muffins. That's
Okay.
I grew
That's why I don't think
That's what I was thinking.
So, I mean, as you can see, we got a lot of things going. So are there any questions for me?
Good job.
Please feel free to stop by and check out the new paint job. It's
Yes.
done.
I hear it's pink
It's, yeah,
in
absolutely.
your office.
It looks good. But
It's clinical.
it's awesome. It's very sterile. Very sterile. That's how we want it. But it'll look really good when we get the flooring and the new furniture replaced. And so, but it's great. Everybody's liking it. It's just a matter now, what are we gonna do? So. Good. All right.
Yeah, I got it.
I'm a tough act to follow.
It's 8:30. We need to go home.
I'd like, before I start, I want to remind you guys that you only pay for half of my program. And a little bit less sometimes too. So we're going through, kind of in the public safety, and the second bullet point down is financing strategy for combined police and fire public safety. We now have 8 female on staff. And there's 2 bathrooms and no changing rooms, and the shower situation is bad. Our office situation is bad. You know, there's a lot of love that needs to be put into that current building. It was built in the 50s and upgraded in the 70s. And so there's some major renovations that need to happen in that current building. And, you know, it's kind of been funny because like, you know, oh, we're gonna get a new building, so let's not put any money into that one. Oh, we're gonna figure this out, so let's not put any money into this. And, oh, we're gonna have a different city administrator, so let's not put any money into this one. And so we kind of continue to kick the can down the road on the facilities piece. And it is a big deal, like, you know, when we look at recruitment and retention of new volunteers, and we look at building people in, and we look at a downtown specific plan, and we want to be proud of our fire station, our city facilities, and that kind of thing, it's gonna need some love. So we need to look at a strategy to either spruce up the place, and that would include some, you know, some interior design and office building and that type of thing. And then, or we need to look at a plan for a new facility, which is always doable as well. You know, there's lots of options out there. Unlike PD, everybody loves the fire department, so there is grant money out there.
That's great. The city has 2 acres on Sunland. Would that be big enough for both of you guys?
Well, for us.
No, seriously.
They have to buy it from me, the water, the well owns it.
And I haven't looked at that specific property in regards to time. But when you look at our fire station, it is in the perfect place. And the reason that I say is we're a volunteer system. And so right now, when the whistle goes off that everybody complains about, people slam into there as quickly as they can and they respond from there. So the further away from the center of town equals more minutes in response time. And so
it's a 2 square mile city, and Sunland is just around the corner from the current location. I'm just advocating for that.
Sure.
Destin and Joe, public works property, where the public works is located right now. What's the size comparable to footprint of police department and fire department?
The actual public works facility.
Where that land is.
Wait, which?
The major
The one we're on right now, where our facility, the building and stuff. Oh, we have a bigger footprint than they do. Between our 2 buildings, I mean, plenty big enough.
Just ask.
The one in Warren Street or friend?
For a friend.
Is that the one they talking about?
Joe, you just brought up a topic here, and before you go too much farther on it, is it possible for you and Dustin and Chief to sit down and tell us where you stand? Where we're at right now versus where we need to be? Because I know you're too small for, you can't fit both your water trucks in there. You have no maintenance facilities. You have some holes. What are they? And can they be mitigated? If not, what do you need? Police, what do you need? The repairs that need to be done, whether it's roof falling in or whatever they are, what are they? And what's a rough figure so that we can have a better picture before making decisions?
Well, isn't that what he's talking about doing? Develop plans and finance strategy for effectively.
Yeah, and I'm just saying where
So, okay.
I love what
So I
it is.
think-
That's what I want to see
Right.
is both. You talk about throwing, and yeah, I've been there, where we throwing money at the hole,
And
what are the benefits?
Well, some of the stuff we need to do, which I didn't even get into today, because I've talked to each one of you individually, is just the cost in that building would be astronomical.
right.
Yeah, and I just want to know, to help us make a decision, developing this, do we spend $1.2 million to make everything okay? Or do you take, what's the next number and where's the value?
Right, I got you. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not gonna stand here and say like, oh, you should go to this property, you should look at that property. I think you should definitely look at what are your needs? What are the plans and what kind of facility is needed for that? And then we can look at other things of like, where would it be ideally located? And if we could have, by the end of the year, like some plans to like make it shovel ready or whatever for when, I mean, you're talking about PD not having lots of, like grant avenues right now, like who knows, there might be a world war coming right around the corner and then all of a sudden public safety is a priority. So we should be ready if like those sorts of things happen.
No, I got you. I think that's clear, Gary.
Sorry.
You're absolutely right. I mean, are we going to, I mean, what does that, you know, and Chief Deck and I had these conversations and we never saw eye to eye. He's like, well, you should just move out or you should move to here. And, you know, I was like, well, this is just not gonna work. Like, this is, you know, the reason that we're here is we're in the center of town where, you know, we can't move our facility down to the sewer treatment plant. And so there's these things, but what we start looking at these price tags, you want to build a new fire administration building, you want to add a police building into it, and we start putting all our wants and needs into it, we're looking at $20 million.
But I think that's okay, because we haven't, you're in a police department that's built in the 50s, you're in a fire department that's now, what, 75 years old? At what point do you say, oh, I love my 1985 Ford truck, but it costs me more to keep it going than a new one's worth? I'm
So
investing.
you get a new gun every 10 years.
Well, let's keep it kind of That's my question is, at what point is it more fiscally responsible to buy the new truck? It's gonna cost you, yeah, you're not gonna be able to go out and buy a new fishing gear every day, but you have to have a truck payment, but you have to have a new truck. And that's kind of where I'd like to see where.
That's the next one, new trucks.
I did not just give you $1 million.
That's the next bullet point, is comprehensive capital equipment replacement program. So we have 14 large pieces of apparatus. And I budgeted last year for a new water tender, and I budgeted at 375 and it came in at 490. Ooh. So the costs are not going down. And so when we look at our average fleet age is 23 years old. And so we have in the near future a significant apparatus cost coming up if you decide that we want 30-year lifespan on them. So in a city, that would be 10-year lifespan on a fire truck because they just get a lot of miles. Now, we don't get a lot of miles on them because there's just 2.2 square miles. I mean, we're going to grade, we're doing all this stuff. We're all of Northern Indiana. And then we're sending some out of district, which compensates us fairly well for it. But what we're looking at is, so we on a 30-year replacement schedule, so technology, safety technology, airbags, pump technology, new, what really happens is the piping rusts out in them. And, there's just these issues that happen. And so we have to replace them at some point. 30 years seems like a really reasonable rate. That makes us have to buy a $500,000 apparatus every 2 years. Now, we share that cost, and we've been getting some extra monies coming in. And so really we've implemented the capital plan, and we've started with, I have the green light to buy the water truck this year. And I also have the green light to spec out the rescue truck, which will hopefully be coming to you fairly soon with. And so we're making progress on that, and that will continue to move forward. And I think we have funding for that. So I think we're in a good position there. We just have to keep up on it and not kick the can down the road, and then realize that the cost of apparatus is going up a lot more significantly than like a loan on it. So it might be more beneficial for us to take loans on apparatus when we need them. And I think the big one that we're needing to look at in this 5-year plan is a ladder truck, which will probably end up costing $1.2 million. So there's a couple of things that I have, so I have some strategies on it. I'm asking the tribe to see whether they have some grant writing capabilities to help us out and that type of thing. But truly, these things are super expensive.
So you're saying take out the fixed number on a fixed number rather than hoping that the number you keep it up. Say it's $1 million. Say it's $1 million now, by the time you get to it 5 years, it's now $2 million, you could have bought it. You're not gonna pay that much interest, is what you're saying? It's actually finance it.
Well, but I, so you're not advocating like doing that for,
All 18, no.
okay, because then we're just throwing this giant problem to somebody to write with people 30 years down the line.
No,
I'll still be around it.
No, but you know, as we move forward, it might be more cost effective to buy apparatus on a loan versus wait for it to keep going.
Sure.
And then just pay it off over a 2-year period, kind of things what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, doing that, it helps with budgeting at least.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my next bullet point down is an overall strategic plan in conjunction with the Bishop Rural Fire Protection District. So we're working on strategic plan stuff here, but truly, where does the fire department need to be? What do our constituents expect for services? And where do those services lie? And what types of resources do we need for their department? So we know our infrastructure is old and falling apart. We know that we need to work on continuing our apparatus. But the real threat, in my opinion, is the EMS sustainability, which is also a bullet point further down. And you know, the reality is private EMS was declining prior to COVID, and then now with COVID, there's been some significant struggles with every single service throughout the state. There's struggles with the new service that just went into San Diego, staffing. There's troubles with the greater AMR company, the staffing in San Bernardino, and so the struggles that we're having here are not anything that's new for anybody. And so overall, I believe we are missing out on 1,500 calls a year by what our status is. And why I say that is I can't think of another fire department in California or Nevada or our region or in anywhere that doesn't send the fire department to an EMS call. And the reason that you send the fire department to an EMS call is, number one is safety. Number two is service to your people. And when the ambulance company or the ambulance gets to a call with 2 people, they are able to do all these things in an extended amount of time. And if you show up with 4 people, then you're able to decrease the amount of time that it takes to take care of the patient and increase safety for your patient, whether you're lifting or providing multiple care at one time, or you're essentially decreasing the amount of time that you're on scene or carrying bags or carrying the patient. There's a lot of stuff. When you have a cardiac patient, a critical cardiac patient, or not even a critical cardiac patient, you know, there's IVs to be started, there's cardiac monitors to be started, there's oxygen to be delivered, there's blood pressures to be taken, there's blood sugars to be done. There's a lot of things that happen, and then that person gets delivered to the hospital. And so those 4 people convene, and then they package the patient, they take care of those things, and then 2 of the people disappear, and the other 2 people take them to the hospital, and the other 2 people are available for the next call, the resiliency call, the backup call. And so I truly think as we look out, what are the services we're providing our community? And if they deserve to get a couple more people on call. And with our current staffing model, with our current ability, adding 1,500 calls a year to our gig is not possible. So that's something I would like you guys to think about. That being said, those people can also handle the station maintenance, they can handle the business inspections, they can handle the ancillary stuff, the changing of pads in AC units, the checking of saws on the truck, the tires, the regular routine maintenance on the fire trucks that are older and that type of thing. So there's a lot of things for these people to be doing. If we were to have 2 people on staff per shift, 24 hours a day, they would be extremely busy.
24 hours a day?
Yeah, so to do that staffing, you have to hire 6 people. So a typical fire department shift is 24 on, 48 off, 1 day on, 2 days on, 4 days off, and that just rotates through for 24 staffing. So ultimately, to do that, the funding would look at a tax measure. You know, and so there's 6,000 parcels in the greater Bishop area between the city and the district. And there's 9,000 parcels when you look at city, district, and sphere of influence, which is all the way up from Keos to the county line. And so if you looked at $100 per parcel, that would bring in 900,000, just less than $1 million, and that would pay for your staffing to do that. And then that would guarantee 4 people on an EMS call. That would take a huge load off Pat and myself, because they would respond to the duty officer calls or the nuisance calls. They would respond to the carbon monoxide alarms. They would respond to the fire alarms. They would respond to the, there's out of the 380 calls a year that we, or the 480 calls we got last year, there was 150 of them that were non-whistle calls. And so they would take care of that big piece, and then they would be that backup ambulance when the ambulance was available.
Would not be an ambulance. There's no billing on this to insurance companies. For our full-time employees showing up.
Right. So, so that's definitely a piece of the pie to look at. Now, really, six full-time employees is not coming from the city. It'd be, and Chief Standard is really good at pointing this out. 40% of our calls are in the city, 40% of the calls are in the fire district, 20% of the calls are in the tribe, 20% of the calls are in the sphere of influence. So, if we break this down and we get the right funding, then we pay for 2, and then the other people and the other parts pay for the other 4.
Because it's something to think about. We provide the dispatching services for 60% of the calls that have nothing to do with the city of Bishop that come out of my budget to provide an employee for that.
I definitely think that when it comes to staffing levels, and especially with like EMS, I can't think of a more important service to the community when somebody needs to go to the hospital or something like that. Like those are the kind of safety nets that we take for granted, but that should definitely be there. I do think that you could have 5 people on this council right now that are like, yeah, this is a great idea, go for it. And in 2 years' time, the majority of the council is different. And so then I don't think that is something that is sustainable in the long term. Especially, and I mean, you mentioned, it would be like a tax measure. Even if in the city, we were able to pass a fire-specific tax measure, then what happens if the rest of the county doesn't pass it? Then are we going to get into that position of, no, we're only gonna take calls in the city? And that we definitely want to avoid.
Will there be two separate matters?
So the best way of moving forward would be go to a joint powers authority versus a joint powers agreement.
Correct. And that's
So
what I was
that-
about to get at.
So that particular authority has the tax powers.
Yeah, exactly.
It will create one entity that would report out to both the district and the city versus the two entities that are creating policy.
And so I think in that regard, we as a city council would have to consider whether we would be in support of forming that sort of an authority. I think in this regard, it's very use case specific. There's a clear designation for it. So, I mean, I would be in support of something like that. Then there's a matter of the rural fire district would have to agree to the same. So,
It seems like a perfect opportunity to start, like an ad hoc committee, like just like how we formed the BAWA.
Like a JPA.
For the two.
well, we have the JPA.
No. Yeah, you have it. I don't know if that's exactly the form, but are you gonna have a meeting has to be Brown Act every time, you know, an informal ad hoc committee, just like we did the BAWA.
Oh, I just mean, we have two members on the JPA.
Yeah, okay, we just take the two, and then you start knocking it out, because Joe's exactly right, and Stephen, the JPA is the only way to take this forward. Because I would assume that everybody in the Bishop area would probably be more than happy to pay $200 a year on property tax that would fund 6 firemen and 6 EMS people full-time that work for the JPA. But you're exactly right, the city of Bishop or the fire district can never sustain this on their own. It has to be in that fashion. And that would also alleviate Joe having like 17 bosses or something.
So I would be interested to hear what you think about this JPA idea.
So when I first got here, I was tasked to create a cost sharing program. And at that time, it was Joe Paxi, who was the interim city administrator / mayor / whatever it was. And it was his decision that we, with the fire department, went with the joint powers agreement. So everybody kept their control. Personally, I feel that an authority would make my life easier, because then I don't have to get approval from this board and this board before we take it forward. So, you know, whenever I get a purchase over 4,000 or ever, whatever, you know, I not only do I come to you guys, but I go to them, and then getting two different really entities with different priorities. I mean, everybody's got the fire priority there, right? But then getting them on the same page and moving down the same road is sometimes fairly difficult. I think there's challenges, because I think that there's a loss of control from both entities. They're both represented, but there's definitely that overall loss of control, maybe some loss of purpose on the district side of things, like why would we have a full district, or, you know, and so there's definitely some issues. And then there's finance and dispatching and HR and all these other nuances to work out. And so there's really, you know, it's not to be taken lightly to move forward.
My second question, because I'm like Stephen, I don't necessarily have a problem. If it's gonna make this move forward so that we can provide EMS services and have it work better in the community, I'm, you know, on the surface, I'm all for a joint powers authority. I guess my question is, how do you think the entire organization would take these guys are paid and these guys are volunteers sort of mixture?
Oh, you're looking, this is a huge cultural shift. This is a huge issue. There are a lot of, there's 100 years of tradition to run through, and there will be problems. However, that being said, is what are we doing that's best for the community? Are we keeping tradition to make sure that we have a happy home, or are we making changes positive for the people that we're supposed to serve?
Right, and I think, change is hard regardless, I just wanted to.
There's two things that firefighters hate: change and when things stay the same.
And I mean,
When they stay the same.
and to be clear, I think the way I see one of the big benefits of going that route is that we would, so JPA would be able to raise its own funds from the whole community that it's serving. There wouldn't be this issue of, oh, well, the city wasn't able to contribute $250K to the capital improvement fund this time around. We picked it up last time. It would get rid of that. And the other thing from a budgeting standpoint is like the city would just have a contract with the JPA. And so we could contract with the JPA for services with the city. We would know ahead of time how much is going to go for that. We can budget for it. Dispatch can contract with JPA.
Yeah, because like right now, what we do is, we're dispatching for everywhere these folks go. And Simons pays only $1,200 a year, and Inyo County pays nothing. And yet we provide more service to them than we do to our own citizens through the dispatch center. And that cost all comes out of me, overtime, benefits, everything.
Right,
So that's why.
and I'm not saying this in the sense of like, oh, we don't think that this is a good service that we don't want to keep providing. to
No, I
the
get
community,
that.
But we want to make sure that like it's equitable and that we're all getting our money's worth and things are accounted for. So, I mean, given what I think I like that your goals for this year are basically doing due diligence on the homework.
Oh, no, I thought you were gonna just come and chat.
It says here,
But here's what it
develop
comes down to. I mean,
program.
last year Mammoth went in the last election cycle, Mammoth went for a property tax increase to increase fire funds, and it was shot down. So in reality, this goes nowhere if the constituents aren't willing to pony up.
That's true.
If they say, oh, everything is working out fine, we're exactly happy, the fire department keeps putting their finger in the dike, we're okay, then that's where this is gonna head, but for a little bit of forethought and a little bit of push, I think Justin said it earlier, we're gonna be the best the city can be. Like, this is the best we're gonna be for constituents. And, we may not be huge in the area, but in Bishop, city is, 4,000, but we're serving with our department, we're serving 12,000 people in a small amount of area. There shouldn't be a reason that there's not an ambulance showing up to your house.
Did I miss that? Did I miss the answer to that? Dean, would it be two separate? I mean, maybe the city people, they vote 67% to go for it, the county says no. Are there two separate measures or could it be?
If it's a JPA, it's one measure.
One measure.
Yeah, countywide.
The authority would run its own measure, the city would not.
Yes, so it doesn't have to be within jurisdiction.
No. So I think there's a huge amount of stuff. This that's a big topic right there. And I think if council would like to take this further, that an ad hoc committee and start fleshing out these things, and I'd be happy to be part of helping feed that, and Joe and whoever would in the district. But I think we might, she's here to start cleaning the building up, but we could be here for 3 days on this subject alone. And it's a hugely important one for our city. I think it can't be taken lightly, but we also, there's way too much to vet and flesh out before we try to make that decision at this level.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a hand grenade in one way.
No, you didn't, Joe. I appreciate it.
No, but I think, you know, we all appreciate, Joe, that you're trying to find the best way to provide the most services, and that's what we all want.
I think overall, we opened up a lot of little doors that needed to be opened. We got discussions, moving in directions to go, because we want to take a little better understand where we are as a city, so I think we'll
We'll try to put together everything Elaine did and all those my notes, and then we'll bring it to a council meeting, or whatever, and try to, you know, get to the point where we can publish this thing and call it our strategic plan, put it on our website and live with this. I really appreciate it. It's been a long, 4 hours is a long time. I know we used to do this at like 8 in the morning and it might last till 2 in the afternoon, so accommodating everybody's schedules and nights, what we had to do, I will say thank you for, this is an important step for us, for the city, is to get this plan done and have some goals and some direction.
No, I really appreciated this.
Yeah,
one.
we appreciate that. I love meetings like this, so I can wrap my head around where we're moving, and I appreciate all the hard work you all put in to, you know, to think long range, so thanks.
Right, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting.
Mr. Mayor, before you do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
I would like to make a final comment that on behalf of the city of Bishop, I'd like to thank the Northern Angel Healthcare District and their staff,
Yes,
the administrator Kelly Davis for letting us use this facility. Thank you.
Right.
Real quick, can we thank Elaine for her hard work putting this together?
Elaine and every
That was it.
member of the
You're
staff.
very welcome, so it's definitely a team effort.
Thank you, everyone.
Adjourn this meeting to 6 p.m. March 14th.